Hello, friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The rumble of my Peterbilt's engine had become like a heartbeat to me after 23 years on the road. My name is Ezekiel Morrison, Zeke to anyone who's shared a cup of truck stop coffee with me, and I've logged more miles than most people drive in 10 lifetimes. 43 years old, weathered by wind and sun through countless windshields, divorced but not bitter about it. My ex-wife Sarah understood that some men aren't meant for suburban lawns and parent-teacher conferences. I send my child support on time, see my kids, David and Emma, every other weekend when I'm not hauling loads across the spine of America, and that arrangement works for everyone. But this story isn't about my family or my career. It's about what I discovered at mile marker 47 on Interstate 80, and why I can never look at a truck stop the same way again. It was September 23rd, a Tuesday that started like any other. I'd picked up a load of automotive parts in Chicago, headed for a distribution center in Denver. The weight was good, heavy enough to keep me stable in the crosswinds that plague I-80 through Nebraska, but not so heavy that I'd have to sweat the way stations. I'd made this run probably 300 times over the years, knew every pothole, every speed trap, every decent place to grab a meal between Lake Michigan and the Rocky Mountains. The Flying J at mile marker 47 had been my regular stop for 15 years. It sat in that stretch of Nebraska where the world flattens out so completely you can see the curve of the earth, where the sky becomes so vast it makes you feel like an ant crawling across God's own table. The place never changed much. Same faded sign, same cracked asphalt that they kept promising to repave, same smell of diesel and bacon grease that had probably soaked into the ground so deep it would outlast us all. I pulled in at 4:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because it struck me as oddly aligned with the mile marker, one of those meaningless coincidences that your brain latches onto during the long, hypnotic hours of night driving. My electronic logbook showed I had about 2 hours left on my 11-hour drive time, but I was feeling that particular exhaustion that comes from staring at dark highway for too long. Better to rest now than risk nodding off somewhere less safe. The lot was maybe a third full, pretty standard for pre-dawn on a weekday. I recognized a few rigs. Cornelius Jackson's blue Kenworth with the chrome stacks that threw light like mirrors, Augustus Murphy's ancient Freightliner that somehow kept passing inspections despite looking like it had survived 3 decades of hard use, and a few owner-operators I knew by sight, if not by name. I parked in my usual spot in the back row, far enough from the reefer units to avoid their constant drone, but close enough to the building that I wouldn't have to trek across the entire lot in the morning. The air brakes hissed as I set them, that familiar sound that signals the transition from motion to rest. I grabbed my shower bag and my dirty clothes. One of the few luxuries of truck stop life is access to relatively clean showers, and after 9 hours in the seat, I was ready for hot water. The fluorescent lights inside the Flying J hit me like a slap. They'd installed new ones recently, LED things that were supposed to be more energy efficient but had all the charm of an interrogation room. The night shift was on. Magdalene behind the register, looking as immovable as a mountain in her Flying J vest, and some kid working the coffee station who couldn't have been more than 19. "Morning, Zeke," Mags called out without looking up from her inventory sheets. She had this uncanny ability to identify drivers by their footsteps, claimed she could tell a Schneider driver from a Swift driver just by how they walked. "Shower room 3 is open. Towels are fresh. Just put them out 20 minutes ago." "Thanks, Mags." "Coffee fresh?" "Tommy just made a new pot. The stuff from earlier could strip paint." I nodded my thanks and headed toward the showers, but something made me pause at the entrance to the small dining area. That's when I first saw her. She was sitting alone in the corner booth, the one with the cracked red vinyl that had been patched with duct tape so many times it looked like a road map. Young, maybe 25 or 26, with long auburn hair that hadn't seen a brush in days. She wore a faded denim jacket that was too big for her frame, probably men's, over a white t-shirt that had seen better days. Her hands were wrapped around a cup of coffee like she was trying to draw every bit of warmth from it, and even from across the room I could see they were trembling. But it wasn't her appearance that made me stop. I'd seen plenty of hard luck cases in truck stops over the years. Runaways, addicts, lot lizards, people one bad decision away from rock bottom. It was the way she kept looking around, her green eyes darting from the door to the windows to the other patrons, with the kind of hypervigilance I'd only seen in combat veterans and abuse survivors. She had the look of prey that knows it's being hunted. Our eyes met for just a second. Hers widened slightly, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Then she quickly looked back down at her coffee. I continued to the showers, but something about her stuck with me. Maybe it was the father in me. Emma was only a few years younger. Or maybe it was just that gut instinct you develop after years of reading people through quick glances at truck stops and way stations. The shower was exactly what I needed. Hot enough to loosen the knots in my shoulders, strong enough pressure to feel like it was actually cleaning off the road grime. I stood under the spray for a good 15 minutes, letting my mind wander through the usual catalog of concerns, the rattle that had developed in my trailer, whether I'd make Denver by Thursday afternoon, if David had made the varsity basketball team like he'd hoped. When I emerged, dressed in my last clean set of clothes, jeans and a flannel that had been washed so many times it was soft as silk, I headed back to the dining area. Part of me expected the girl to be gone, just another phantom passing through the crossroads of America's highway system. But she was still there, same position, same death grip on her coffee cup. Only now I noticed the cup was still full. She hadn't taken a single sip. I ordered my usual from the kid at the counter, scrambled eggs, wheat toast, hash browns, black coffee, and found myself taking a booth where I could keep an eye on her without being obvious about it. The eggs were rubber, the toast was stale, and the hash browns were more grease than potato. But that was par for the course. You don't eat at truck stops for the cuisine. You eat to keep your body functioning for another 500 miles. I was halfway through my meal when she suddenly stood up, the movement so abrupt it made me look up from my plate. She walked quickly toward the exit, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to make herself smaller, invisible. Through the window, I watched her cross the parking lot, but instead of heading toward any of the cars or trucks, she disappeared around the side of the building where the dumpsters were kept. Strange one, that girl. I looked up to find Mags standing beside my table, coffee pot in hand. She refilled my cup without asking. She knew I'd want at least 3 cups before hitting the road again. "You know her?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Never seen her before tonight. Came in about an hour before you did. Paid for the coffee with a handful of crumpled ones and quarters she dug out of her jacket pocket. Counted it out 3 times to make sure she had enough." Mags shook her head. Asked if she needed help, if there was someone I could call for her. She just shook her head and went to sit down. Been there ever since. "She look high to you? Drunk?" "Stone cold sober, far as I can tell. Just scared. That kind of scared that sits in your bones, you know?" I did know. I'd seen it before, in women running from bad relationships, in kids trying to escape situations no kid should have to escape from. The kind of fear that comes from knowing exactly what you're running from, and exactly what will happen if it catches you. "Maybe someone should check on her," I suggested. Mags gave me a look that managed to be both sympathetic and warning. "Zeke, you know the rules out here. Don't get involved in other people's problems. You don't know what kind of trouble she's carrying, and you got your own life to worry about. Your kids need their daddy coming home safe, not playing hero for strangers." She was right, of course. Rule number 1 of long-haul trucking, mind your own business. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. The highways were full of people running from something or toward something, and getting tangled up in their stories was a good way to end up in a shallow grave beside some lonely stretch of road. But when I finished my breakfast and paid my check, I found myself walking around the side of the building instead of heading straight to my truck. The girl was there, sitting on the concrete barrier that separated the dumpster area from the back lot, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, and I saw her whole body tense, ready to run. "Easy," I said, stopping a good 10 feet away, hands visible. "Just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," she said quickly, but her voice cracked on the second word. "Look, I'm not trying to bother you, but it's pretty clear you're not fine. You in some kind of trouble?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options, trying to decide if I was a threat or maybe possibly help. "I need to get to Denver," she finally said. "I have family there, an aunt. She's expecting me. Bus station's in town, about 10 miles east. Greyhound runs through here twice a day." "I know." She looked away. "That's not... I can't go to the bus station." Red flag number 1. Someone looking for you there? Someone's looking for me everywhere. The words came out in a whisper, and she immediately looked like she regretted saying them. I should have walked away then, should have wished her luck and gone back to my truck, fired up the engine, and gotten back on the road. But there was something about the way she said it, not dramatic or attention-seeking, just a flat statement of fact that chilled me more than any scream could have. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated. "Delilah. Delilah Patterson. I'm Zeke. Look, Delilah, I'm headed to Denver with a load. Company policy says I can't take passengers, insurance liability and all that, but..." I paused, already regretting what I was about to say. "But there's a truck stop about 60 miles west of here. Bigger place, more traffic. You might have better luck finding a ride there. I could maybe give you enough cash for a cab to get you that far." "I have money," she said quickly. "It's not about money, it's about..." She trailed off, looking around nervously. "They check IDs now. For everything. Buses, trains, even some cab companies. And I don't have..." She pulled her jacket tighter around herself. "I don't have documentation that's safe to use." Red flag number 2. No ID meant she was either underage, in trouble with the law, or running from someone with enough reach to track her through official channels. None of those scenarios were good. "There's a church in town," I offered. "Lutheran, I think. They help people sometimes, no questions asked." "No churches," she said sharply, panic flashing in her eyes. "Please, no churches. That's the first place they'd look." They. Not he or she, but they. Red flag number 3. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on gravel. Another driver was walking past, heading toward the back lot. I recognized him. Jeremiah Hobbs, an old-timer who'd been driving these routes since before I got my CDL. He gave me a nod and Delilah a long, curious look before continuing on his way. "I should go," Delilah said, standing quickly. "I'm sorry to bother you. Thanks for checking on me." She started to walk away, back toward the front of the building. I let her go, but stood there for a moment, trying to shake the feeling that I'd just missed something important. When I finally headed back to my truck, I saw her through the store windows, back in that corner booth. Same position, same untouched cup of coffee. I climbed into my cab and tried to catch a few hours of sleep in the sleeper berth, but my mind kept circling back to the girl. Who was she running from? Why couldn't she use normal transportation? What had her so terrified that she'd rather sit in a truck stop all night than risk going to a church for help? Sleep finally came, fitful and filled with dreams I couldn't quite remember when my alarm went off at 8 a.m. I did my pre-trip inspection, checking tires, fluid levels, making sure my load was still secure, and was about to pull out when I saw her again. She was standing by the edge of the parking lot, right where the asphalt met the scrub grass that stretched out toward the horizon. She was staring at something in the distance, her whole body rigid with tension. I followed her gaze but saw nothing except empty plains and the occasional billboard. Then she turned and ran. Not jogged, not walked quickly, but flat out ran toward the truck parking area. She dodged between rigs, using them as cover, and I lost sight of her among the maze of trailers. I waited, watching, but she didn't reappear. The rational part of my brain said to leave it alone, get back on the road, forget about Delilah Patterson and whatever trouble was chasing her. But the father in me, the part that imagined Emma in the same situation, wouldn't let me drive away without at least trying to help. I pulled out of my spot and slowly cruised through the truck parking area, looking for any sign of her. Nothing. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. After 10 minutes of searching, I gave up and headed for the exit. As I merged back onto I-80, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been a bit player in someone else's nightmare. Little did I know that this was just the beginning, and that Delilah Patterson would haunt my roots for months to come. Sometimes as a memory, sometimes as something impossible, and always as a reminder that there are things happening at the truck stops of America that most people never notice, and fewer still survive to tell about. I made my delivery in Denver without incident, picked up a return load of agricultural equipment bound for Des Moines, and tried to put the strange encounter with Delilah Patterson out of my mind. But the image of her terrified green eyes kept surfacing during the long, empty stretches of highway, especially when I passed mile marker 47 on the return trip. It was 3 days later, September 26th, when I pulled into the Flying J again. Different time, just past midnight, but the same familiar parking lot, the same neon glow against the prairie darkness. I was running solo this time, no load, deadheading back to Chicago to pick up a shipment of electronics. The lot was quieter than usual, maybe 8 or 9 trucks total. I parked and headed inside, not really tired, but needing to stretch my legs and grab something to eat. The night shift was different. A young guy named Tommy at the register, and Temperance, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, working the kitchen. I was sitting at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee and picking at a piece of pie that claimed to be apple but tasted more like sweetened cardboard, when I saw the missing person flyer taped to the window. The photo was grainy, probably enlarged from a driver's license or school ID, but it was definitely her. Same auburn hair, same green eyes, same delicate features that looked too young, too innocent for the fear I'd seen in them. Missing. Delilah Patterson, age 23. Last seen September 22nd in North Platte, Nebraska. If you have any information, please contact. September 22nd, the day before I'd seen her. She'd been missing for a full day before showing up at the Flying J. My hand was reaching for my phone before I'd fully processed the implications. The number connected me to the North Platte Police Department. After being transferred twice and explaining who I was, I finally got Detective Augustus Brennan on the line. His voice sounded tired, like he'd been working this case nonstop. Mr. Morrison, you said you saw Delilah Patterson. When and where exactly? September 23rd, early morning, around 4:30 a.m., at the Flying J truck stop at mile marker 47 on I-80. She was sitting in the dining area, seemed scared, said she needed to get to Denver. There was a long pause on the other end. Too long. Mr. Morrison, I appreciate you calling, but there must be some mistake. No mistake. I talked to her. She told me her name. Delilah Patterson. Auburn hair, green eyes, denim jacket. It was definitely her. Another pause. Then the detective cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison, Delilah Patterson's body was found on September 22nd in a ravine about 15 miles outside North Platte. She'd been dead for at least 3 days when we found her. The coroner confirmed it. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Tommy looked up from his magazine, startled. "That's impossible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saw her. I talked to her. She was real. She was right there." "Sir, I understand this is confusing, but whoever you saw, it wasn't Delilah Patterson. Perhaps someone who looked similar? The mind can play tricks, especially when you're tired." "I wasn't tired. I wasn't seeing things. She told me her name. She said people were looking for her, that she couldn't use her ID. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to come to the station and give a formal statement. Where are you now?" "The same truck stop, mile marker 47. Stay there. I'll have an officer come to you." But I didn't wait for the officer. After hanging up, I walked over to where Temperance was wiping down tables. "That girl," I said, pointing to the flyer. "Have you seen her?" Temperance looked at the picture and nodded slowly. "Poor thing. Yes, she's been here a few times over the past week. Always at night, always alone. Sits in that corner booth for hours, never eats anything, just orders coffee." "When was the last time you saw her?" 2 nights ago, maybe? But hon, the police were already here asking about her. They said she's..." She lowered her voice. "They said she's dead. Found her body days ago. But that can't be right if I saw her after that, can it?" "What did you tell the police?" "The truth. That I'd seen her. But they looked at me like I was crazy. Kept insisting I must be confused about the dates." I pulled out my phone and showed her my recent calls. "Look, I called them just now. September 26th, 12:47 a.m. You're my witness that I was here, that we had this conversation about seeing her after she was supposedly dead." Temperance looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Sure, hon. Whatever you need." I went back to my truck to wait for the police, but my mind was racing. How could Delilah Patterson be dead for days before I met her? How could multiple people have seen her after her death? Nothing made sense. The officer never came. I waited 2 hours, then called the detective back. The number went straight to voicemail. I left a message and pulled out of the truck stop as the sun was coming up. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I started asking other truckers about unusual experiences at mile marker 47. Most hadn't noticed anything, but a few had stories. Thaddeus Thunder, a driver I'd known for years, told me about seeing a young woman matching Delilah's description trying to flag down trucks at 3 a.m., only to vanish when anyone stopped. Bartholomew Cross mentioned weird cold spots in the parking lot, places where the temperature would drop 20 degrees for no reason. But it was Obadiah Morse who told me the thing that made my blood run cold. "That truck stop," he said over beers at a bar in Des Moines. "It's got a history. My daddy drove these routes in the 60s and 70s, and he used to tell stories. Women disappearing, showing up days later with no memory of where they'd been. And sometimes..." He paused, took a long pull from his beer. "Sometimes they'd show up after they were already dead, walking around, talking to people, asking for rides. But they weren't really there, not in the way you and I are here." "That's crazy. Is it? You saw that Patterson girl after she was dead, didn't you?" "I don't know what I saw anymore." "I'll tell you what you saw. You saw an echo. That place, mile marker 47, it's thin." "Thin?" "Between here and somewhere else. Between now and then. Sometimes things bleed through. People who were there, who will be there, who are there in some other timeline. Native Americans used to avoid that area, called it the hunger ground, said it ate people's spirits. I wanted to dismiss it as trucker folklore, the kind of stories that grow in the dark hours between midnight and dawn. But I'd seen Delilah Patterson. I'd talked to her. And according to the official record, she'd been dead for days when I did. 2 weeks passed before I found myself at mile marker 47 again. I'd tried to avoid it, taking alternate routes even when it added hours to my drive. But eventually, the familiar route called me back. It was October 10th, just past 2 a.m., when I pulled into the Flying J. The lot was busier than usual, probably 15 trucks parked for the night. I recognized most of them, regulars who, like me, had made this stop part of their routine. But there was one truck I didn't recognize, a white Volvo with muddy plates parked at the far edge of the lot. Inside, Mags was back on the night shift. She looked up when I walked in, and her expression immediately turned serious. "Zeke, we need to talk." "About what?" She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned across the counter. "There's been another one." "Another what?" "Another girl. Went missing 3 days ago from Grand Island. Serafina Cross, 26 years old. Blonde hair, brown eyes. The police were here yesterday showing her picture around." "And?" "And she was here last night, Zeke, sitting in that same corner booth, same as the Patterson girl. Ordered coffee, didn't drink it, kept looking around all scared. I tried to talk to her, but she just stared at me like she couldn't quite see me, you know? Like she was looking through me at something else." "Did you call the police?" "Of course I did. They came out, looked at the security footage. But here's the thing, she wasn't on it. The booth was empty on the video. But I saw her, Zeke. I know what I saw." "Where is she now?" "Gone. Vanished around 3 a.m., just like the other one. 1 second she was there, next second the booth was empty. Didn't see her leave, didn't see her get up. Just gone." I walked over to the corner booth. It looked normal enough, cracked vinyl, worn Formica table, the same as it had always been. But when I put my hand on the seat, it was cold. Ice cold, despite the warm air in the restaurant. "Mags," I said slowly, "how many girls have gone missing around here? Really missing, not just passing through?" She was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a notebook from under the counter. It was filled with newspaper clippings, missing person flyers, handwritten notes. "I started keeping track about 5 years ago," she said. 37 women between the ages of 18 and 30, all last seen within 50 miles of here, most of them never found. The ones that were found..." She paused. "They were found dead, but people kept reporting seeing them after, here, at other truck stops, walking along the highway." "Why haven't you told anyone?" "I have. Police think I'm crazy. FBI came once, looked around, said there was no evidence of anything unusual. But Zeke, I've worked here for 23 years. I know when something's not right. And this place, something feeds here." "Feeds?" "On fear. On desperation. These girls, they all have that in common. They're all running from something, all scared, all alone. And something here, it notices them, takes them, uses them." "Uses them for what?" "I don't know. But sometimes, late at night I hear them. Crying in the bathroom when no one's in there. Whispering in the parking lot. Asking for help in voices that come from nowhere." Before I could respond, the lights flickered, just for a second, but in that second I saw her. Delilah Patterson, standing right beside me, her mouth open in a silent scream. Then the light steadied, and she was gone. "You saw her," Mag said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, I saw her. They're getting stronger, more visible, like whatever's keeping them here is growing more powerful." I spent the rest of that night in the truck stop, watching, waiting. Around 4 a.m., the temperature dropped suddenly, and I saw them. Not just Delilah, but others. A blonde who might have been Serafina Cross, a brunette in a torn dress, a redhead who couldn't have been more than 19. They materialized in the corner booth, one after another, each sitting in the same position, hands wrapped around invisible coffee cups. They all had the same expression, terror mixed with confusion, like they didn't understand what had happened to them, where they were, why no one would help them. They looked at me, through me, past me, their eyes pleading for something I didn't know how to give. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, they were gone. The booth was empty. The temperature returned to normal, and the only evidence of what I'd seen was the frost on the window beside the booth, formed in the shape of handprints. I left as the sun came up, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. These women were trapped somehow, caught between life and death, between here and somewhere else. And something at mile marker 47 was keeping them that way, feeding off their fear, their desperation. I started researching the history of the area. What I found made everything worse. The land where the Flying J sat had been the site of a stagecoach stop in the 1860s, run by a man named Josiah Whitmore. According to historical records, Whitmore had been accused of murdering female travelers, though he was never convicted. The bodies of 7 women were found buried behind his station, but locals whispered that there were more, many more, that were never found. Whitmore claimed innocence until the day he was lynched by a mob in 1871. His last words, according to witness accounts, were, "This ground is hungry. It's been hungry long before me, and it'll be hungry long after. I just fed it what it wanted." The stagecoach stop burned down that same night, but stories persisted. Travelers reporting strange encounters, missing women, voices in the dark. When the interstate was built in the 1950s, workers reported finding bones, lots of them, but construction continued. The Flying J was built in 1982, and the disappearances started almost immediately. I compiled all of this into a report and sent it to Detective Brennan, the one who'd told me Delilah was dead. He called me 3 days later. "Mr. Morrison, this is interesting historical information, but it explains everything," I interrupted. "That place is a feeding ground. It's been taking women for over a century, and now it's keeping them, using them as bait to attract more victims." "That's not possible." "Then you explain it. Explain how multiple witnesses see dead women. Explain the disappearances. Explain why your security cameras can't see what human eyes can." He was quiet for a long moment. "There have been irregularities in the cases, things that don't make sense. But what you're suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what I've seen, what others have seen. That place needs to be shut down. The ground needs to be excavated, blessed, something. I can't take that to my superiors based on ghost stories. Then more women will die, more will disappear, and you'll have their blood on your hands." He hung up on me, but I couldn't let it go. I started warning every female traveler I saw heading toward mile marker 47. Some listened, most didn't. I became known as the crazy trucker who believed in ghosts, who saw dead women at truck stops. Then, on November 15th, everything changed. I was eastbound on I-80, hauling a load of frozen goods to Omaha. It was just past 3 a.m. when I saw her on the side of the road, not at the truck stop, but walking along the shoulder about 5 miles east of mile marker 47. It was Delilah Patterson, but this time she looked different, solid, real. The wind was moving her hair, her feet were leaving prints in the gravel. I pulled over, against every instinct screaming at me to keep driving. She walked up to my truck, and when she spoke, her voice was clear, not the whispered echo I'd heard before. "You can see me," she said. "Yeah, I can see you. Really see me. Not like the others. They see through me, past me. But you see me." "What are you?" "I don't know anymore. I died, I know that. My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, he killed me, strangled me and dumped my body. But I didn't go wherever I was supposed to go. Something pulled me back, keeps me here. The hunger ground." She nodded. "It feeds on us, our fear, our desperation, but also our hope. Every time someone sees us, every time someone tries to help, it gets stronger. We're bait, but we're also food. How do I help you?" You can't. No one can. We're part of it now, woven into whatever that thing is. But you can warn others. Keep them away. Don't let it take anyone else. There has to be something. There isn't. But thank you for seeing me, for believing. Most people don't. She started to fade, becoming translucent. Wait, I called out. The others, the other women, are they all like you? Yes. Trapped. Feeding it whether we want to or not. Every night we manifest in that booth, hoping someone will see us, help us, but all we do is lure more victims. How many? Hundreds. Going back decades, maybe longer. Layers and layers of us, stacked on top of each other in time. All scared, all alone, all food for something that should never have existed. She was almost gone now, just a shimmer in the air. Ezekiel. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't come back here. It knows you now. It knows you can see. That makes you dangerous, but it also makes you a target. Stay away. Then she was gone, and I was alone on the side of the highway, wondering if I'd just had a conversation with a ghost, or if I was losing my mind. I tried to stay away from mile marker 47. For 3 weeks, I took longer routes, ate the extra fuel costs, made excuses to dispatchers about construction and weather. But the road has a way of pulling you back, especially when you've driven the same routes for decades. And there was something else, a nagging feeling that I'd left something unfinished, that those trapped women needed someone to bear witness to their plight. It was December 3rd when I finally returned. A brutal winter storm had closed I-70 through Colorado, forcing me to take I-80 whether I wanted to or not. The snow was coming down hard, visibility maybe 50 feet, the kind of conditions where you white-knuckle the steering wheel and pray your 18 wheels keep gripping asphalt. The Flying J materialized out of the blizzard like a neon oasis. The lot was packed. Every driver with sense was waiting out the storm. I had to circle twice before finding a spot, squeezed between 2 reefer units whose generators hummed like angry wasps. Inside was chaos. Maybe 60 drivers all trying to get food, showers, supplies. The staff was overwhelmed. I recognized Temperance behind the register, looking frazzled, and a new kid working the kitchen who clearly had no idea what he was doing. No sign of Mags. I later learned she'd quit 2 weeks earlier, said she couldn't handle the atmosphere anymore. I found a spot at the counter, ordered coffee, and tried to blend into the crowd. But even with all the noise and activity, I could feel it, that wrongness that permeated the place. The corner booth was empty, but the air around it shimmered slightly, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. Zeke Morrison. I turned to find a man I didn't recognize sitting beside me, mid-40s, clean-shaven, wearing clothes that were too nice for a trucker, khakis and a button-down under a North Face jacket. Do I know you? No, but I know you. My name is Dr. Silas Blackwood. I'm a parapsychologist from the University of Nebraska. I've been investigating the phenomena at this location. Phenomena, that's what you call it? What would you call it? A nightmare, a tragedy? Hell, maybe literally hell. He pulled out a tablet, swiped through some files. You've seen them. The women, Delilah Patterson, Serafina Cross, others. How do you know that? I've interviewed 17 witnesses who've had similar experiences. You're not crazy, Mr. Morrison. Something extraordinary is happening here. Extraordinary? Women are dying. Their souls or spirits or whatever are trapped. That's not extraordinary, it's horrific. Yes, but it's also scientifically fascinating. A location where the barrier between dimensions is compromised, where consciousness persists after physical death, where innocent people are suffering. I interrupted. Can you help them or not? His enthusiasm dimmed slightly. I'm trying to understand the mechanism first. You can't solve a problem you don't comprehend. What have you learned? He glanced around, then leaned closer. This location sits on a convergence of ley lines, electromagnetic anomalies that some believe can affect consciousness. Add to that the historical trauma, the accumulated fear and death, and you have a perfect storm for paranormal activity. That's academic talk for I don't know, isn't it? Not exactly. I believe something feeds here, just as the witnesses describe, but it's not supernatural in the traditional sense. It's more like a parasite that exists partially in our dimension and partially in another. It feeds on strong emotions, fear, desperation, hope, and uses that energy to maintain its existence. And the women? Caught in its web, their consciousness, their essence, trapped at the moment of peak emotional intensity. It replays them like recordings, but with just enough awareness to suffer, to hope for rescue that never comes. Can you destroy it? He shook his head. Destroy something that exists in multiple dimensions? I wouldn't know where to begin, but I might be able to document it, prove it exists, bring in resources. The lights flickered, not just a quick flicker, but a long, deliberate dimming. The conversation in the truck stop died as everyone looked up. When the lights came back, she was there. Not in the corner booth, but standing in the middle of the dining area. Delilah Patterson, solid as any living person, but wrong. Her skin was too pale, her movements too fluid, and when she turned her head, it moved in small, jerky increments, like a bird. Half the truckers couldn't see her. They just looked confused at those of us who were staring. But the other half saw her clear as day, and the fear in that room was palpable. "Hello, Ezekiel," she said, and her voice carried, despite the noise, transmitted directly into my brain rather than through my ears. "I told you not to come back." I had no choice. The storm. There's always a choice. You chose to return, and now it knows you're here. Dr. Blackwood was furiously taking notes, holding up some kind of measurement device. Incredible. The electromagnetic readings are off the charts. She's manifesting at 437.5 Hz, the exact frequency associated with fear responses in the human brain. Delilah turned to him, and her face shifted, became something else for a moment. Older, ancient, hungry. "Another observer, another meal. You think your science can understand what has existed since before your species drew breath?" "You're not Delilah," Blackwood said, his academic excitement replaced by genuine fear. "I am Delilah, and I am the others, and I am the thing that ate them. We are one now, inseparable. Every woman who dies here becomes part of it, and it becomes part of them." More figures materialized around her. Seraphina Cross, the blonde I'd seen before, a brunette in a 1950s dress, a woman in pioneer clothing, dozens of them, maybe more, all standing in impossible spaces, overlapping, existing in the same location at different times. "So many," one of them whispered. "So hungry," said another. "So tired," they chorused together. The temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the windows despite the heated interior. Several truckers ran for the exit, but the doors wouldn't open. We were trapped. "What do you want?" I asked. All of them turned to look at me in perfect synchronization. "To feed," they said in unison. "To grow. To spread. This place is just the beginning. Every truck stop, every rest area, every lonely place where travelers pause, we will be there, waiting, hungry, eternal. Why show yourself now? Why reveal this? Because the time of hiding is over. We are strong enough now. Decades of feeding, of growing, and you, Ezekiel Morrison, you will help us. Like hell I will." Delilah smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was something wearing her face like a mask. "You already have. Every woman you tried to warn away, you marked with your concern. We can find them now wherever they go. Your compassion has doomed them." The horror of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Every woman I'd tried to help, every warning I'd given, I'd painted targets on their backs. "No," I said. "That's not possible." "The road connects all things," the collective voice continued. "Every mile of asphalt is a vein, every truck stop a heart. We flow through it all now, thanks to you." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward, holding up his device. "You're lying. You're confined to this location. The electromagnetic readings prove it. You can't extend beyond this convergence point." The thing wearing Delilah's face laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your instruments measure only what exists in your narrow slice of reality. We exist in spaces between spaces, times between times. We are wherever fear travels, and fear travels every road." To demonstrate, the air shimmered, and I saw flashes of other places, other truck stops, rest areas, lonely stretches of highway. In each one, a woman sat alone in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, eyes full of terror. "My God," someone whispered. "They're everywhere." "Not yet," the collective said. "But soon. The network is almost complete, every node connected, every feeding ground prepared, and when the circuit closes—" They didn't finish the sentence. They didn't need to. The implication was clear. When their network was complete, nowhere would be safe. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, I heard screaming, crying, the sound of something large and hungry moving through the crowd. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a red glow that made the scene even more nightmarish. The women were among us now, moving through the crowd, touching people. Where they touched, frost formed. Several truckers collapsed, their faces blue with cold, their eyes wide with whatever they'd seen in that moment of contact. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to find Delilah standing there. This close, I could see through her, see the thing wearing her like a suit. It was vast, ancient, composed of nothing but hunger and malice. "You want to save them," it said. "That's what makes you perfect. Your compassion is the key that will open every door, your concern the bait that will draw them in. Every mile you drive, you spread our influence. Every stop you make, you prepare the ground. Then I'll stop driving. I'll quit. And abandon all the women who might need help. All the ones you might save. You can't. It's not in your nature. You're trapped just as surely as we are, Ezekiel. Trapped by your own humanity." She was right, and that was the worst part. I couldn't stop trying to help, couldn't stop warning people, even knowing that my very concern might be dooming them. The lights came back on suddenly, and the women were gone. The truck stop looked normal again, except for the dozen truckers on the floor, some unconscious, some crying, some just staring at nothing with 1,000-yard stares. Dr. Blackwood was frantically checking his equipment. "They're gone. The readings are normal. It's like they were never here." But I knew better. They were still here, just hidden again, waiting in that space between spaces. And they were growing stronger. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Someone had managed to call 911 during the manifestation. They treated it as a mass hallucination event, probably carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater. The truckers who'd collapsed were taken to hospitals. The rest of us were told to evacuate while the building was inspected. I found myself in the parking lot with Dr. Blackwood and a handful of other drivers who'd clearly seen what really happened. We stood in the falling snow, none of us quite ready to leave. All of us changed by what we'd witnessed. "What do we do?" asked Cornelius Jackson, a driver I'd known for years. "How do we fight this?" "We don't," I said. "We can't fight something that exists partially outside our reality. All we can do is warn people." "But you said warning them marks them," another driver pointed out. "Then we're damned either way. We either let people walk into danger unknowing, or we try to help and potentially make them targets." Dr. Blackwood was still studying his tablet. "There might be another way if this thing feeds on fear and desperation. What if we could starve it? What if we could make sure no one stops here alone and afraid?" "How?" "Create a network. Truckers looking out for vulnerable travelers. Make sure anyone who seems scared or desperate has protection, company. Never let them be alone in places like this." It was a good idea in theory, but I knew the reality of the road. There would always be someone alone, someone desperate, someone running from something worse than what waited at mile marker 47. But we tried anyway. We formed an informal network, spreading the word among drivers. Watch for women traveling alone. Check on anyone who seems distressed. Never let anyone sit alone in a corner booth at night. For a while, it seemed to work. The disappearances slowed. The manifestations became less frequent. I started to hope that maybe we could contain this thing, keep it from spreading. Then came January 15th. I was westbound with a load of pharmaceuticals, making good time despite icy conditions. I'd been avoiding mile marker 47 successfully for weeks, but I heard the chatter on the CB that made my blood run cold. "Anyone else seeing this? Whole convoy of women, must be 30 cars, all heading for that flying J at 47. I grabbed my radio. "This is Ezekiel. What do you mean, convoy?" "I mean 30-plus vehicles, all with single female drivers, all taking the exit. Moving like they're synchronized or something. Creepy as hell." I was 50 miles away. I pushed the speed as much as I dared on icy roads, but by the time I arrived, it was too late. The parking lot was full of abandoned cars. Doors open, engines running, but no people. Inside the truck stop, Temperance was standing behind the counter, tears streaming down her face. "They all came in at once," she said. 30, 40 women, all different ages, different backgrounds. They walked straight to that corner booth and just disappeared, one after another, walking into something I couldn't see. "Did they say anything?" "They all said the same thing. He tried to warn me, over and over. He tried to warn me." My warnings. Every woman I'd tried to help over the past months had been gathered, called to this place. The thing at mile marker 47 had used my compassion as a beacon, drawing them in for a massive feeding. I found Dr. Blackwood's card in my wallet and called him. He arrived within hours with a team of researchers, but there was nothing to study. The women were gone, absorbed into whatever existed at this convergence point. All that remained were their vehicles and the growing sense of dread that permeated the entire area. "It's evolving," Blackwood said after reviewing his readings. "Learning, using our attempts to stop it as a means to grow stronger. Then we stopped trying. We let it alone." "Can you do that? Can you drive past here knowing what's happening and do nothing?" I wanted to say yes, but I knew I couldn't. None of us could. We were all trapped in this nightmare, forced to choose between action that might make things worse and inaction that definitely would. That night, I sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the building. Around 3 a.m. they appeared again. Not just Delilah and Seraphina and the others I'd seen before, but the new ones. 40 more women added to the collection, all sitting in that corner booth that had somehow expanded to accommodate them all, existing in impossible space. They looked at me through the window, and I saw my failure reflected in their eyes. Every woman I'd tried to save, now trapped forever because of my intervention. One of them, a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes, mouthed words I could read clearly. "It's not your fault." But it was, and we both knew it. The federal investigation started 3 days after the mass disappearance. FBI, state police, even some agencies I'd never heard of descended on mile marker 47 like locusts. They closed the Flying J, set up a mobile command center in the parking lot, and began interviewing everyone who'd ever stopped there. I spent 12 hours in an interrogation room in a trailer, telling my story over and over to agents who looked at me like I was either insane or lying. Agent Jeremiah Hollis, the lead investigator, was a thin man with gray eyes that never seemed to blink. "Mr. Morrison," he said for the 10th time, 43 women don't just vanish into thin air. Someone knows something. Someone saw something real, not this ghost story nonsense. I told you what I saw. You told me about dead women walking and interdimensional parasites. I need facts, not folklore. Then explain the security footage. That was the thing that had them stumped. The truck stop's cameras had captured the women arriving, walking inside, heading toward the corner booth, and then nothing. They simply weren't there anymore. One frame they existed, the next they didn't. No edited footage, no technical glitches, just 43 women ceasing to exist between 1 second and the next. "Technical anomaly," Hollis said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Dr. Blackwood was brought in as an expert consultant. He showed them his readings, his data, his carefully documented evidence of electromagnetic anomalies and dimensional instabilities. They listened politely, then dismissed him as a crackpot academic chasing tenure through sensationalism. But the disappearances kept happening. Not just at mile marker 47 anymore. The thing had been right. It was spreading. Truck stops along I-80 reported similar incidents. Women vanishing from corner booths, security cameras malfunctioning, witnesses describing impossible things. The media got hold of the story. The highway phantom, they called it, treating it like an urban legend rather than the genuine horror it was. Cable news brought in experts to debate whether it was a serial killer network, human trafficking, or mass hysteria. None of them came close to the truth. I kept driving, but it was different now. Every truck stop felt dangerous. Every woman traveling alone looked like a potential victim. I started keeping a detailed log of every strange incident, every sighting, trying to map the spread of whatever this thing was. February 20th, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Ezekiel Morrison?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Prudence Walker. I was Delilah Patterson's sister." My blood ran cold. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be sorry. Just tell me the truth. You saw her after she died, didn't you?" "How did you—" "I've been investigating since September, talking to people, collecting stories. You're not the only one who's seen her, but you're the only one who seems to understand what's happening. What do you want from me?" "To meet, to talk, to figure out how to save her." "She can't be saved. She's part of it now. Everyone can be saved, Mr. Morrison. We just have to figure out how." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We chose a diner in Des Moines, far from any interstate, far from the network of roads that the thing seemed to control. Prudence looked nothing like her sister, short where Delilah had been tall, dark-haired where Delilah had been auburn, but with the same green eyes that seemed to see too much. "Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning." So I did. Every detail, every encounter, every horrible realization. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a leather journal. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a folder thick with papers. "I've been researching the history of these disappearances," she said. "They go back further than you know. Much further." She showed me newspaper clippings from the 1920s, reports from the 1890s, even diary entries from the 1850s, all describing the same phenomenon. Women disappearing from waypoints along travel routes, witnesses reporting seeing them after their confirmed deaths. "It's been feeding for over a century," she continued. "Maybe longer. But here's the interesting part. It's happened before, this expansion. In the 1920s, it spread along railroad routes. In the 1870s, stagecoach stops. Each time, it eventually contracted back to specific locations, like it gorged itself, then went dormant. So it's cyclical? Seems to be. And if the pattern holds, we're approaching the peak of the current cycle. It will feed until it's satiated, then retreat back to its primary locations for another few decades. How many more have to die before it's satiated? Based on historical patterns? Hundreds, maybe thousands. The weight of that number sat between us like a physical presence. "There has to be a way to stop it," she said. "My sister, what's left of her. She doesn't deserve this. None of them do." "Your sister is gone, Prudence. What you might see, what I've seen, it's just an echo being used by this thing. You don't know that. You said she talked to you, warned you. That suggests some level of consciousness, some part of her that's still aware." She had a point. The Delilah I'd spoken to had seemed genuinely concerned for my safety, had tried to warn me away. Was there still something of the real woman trapped inside the thing that wore her face? "What are you proposing?" I asked. "We go back to mile marker 47. We try to communicate with her, with them. Maybe we can find a way to release them." "That's suicide." "Maybe. But I can't live knowing my sister is trapped in that hell. Can you live knowing you might have been able to help and didn't try?" She knew exactly what buttons to push. The guilt I carried about the women I'd failed to save, about the ones my warnings had doomed, it ate at me every day. "When?" I asked. "Tonight. The patterns show increased activity during the new moon. The barrier is thinnest then." That night, we drove to mile marker 47 in Prudence's car. The Flying J was still closed, surrounded by federal investigation tape, but that didn't matter. We weren't going inside. We parked at the edge of the lot, close enough to see but far enough to run if needed. Prudence had brought equipment, EMF readers, recording devices, even what she claimed was a spirit box for communication with the dead. At exactly 3:00 a.m., the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Our breath became visible, and frost formed on the windshield despite the heater running full blast. They appeared slowly, materializing out of the darkness like photographs developing. First Delilah, then Seraphina, then dozens of others. They stood in a circle around the closed truck stop, their faces turned toward us. Prudence grabbed her spirit box, a modified radio that supposedly allowed spirits to communicate through white noise. She turned it on, and immediately voices poured through, dozens of them all talking at once, a cacophony of fear and confusion. "Delilah!" Prudence called out. "Delilah Patterson, it's me, Prue, your sister." The voices on the spirit box quieted. Then, clearly we heard, "Prue? Is that you?" "It's me, Dee. I'm here. I'm going to help you." "You can't be here. It's not safe." "I don't care about safe. I care about you. How do I free you?" "You can't. We're part of it now, woven into the hunger. There has to be a way. The only way is to feed it. Everything. Let it gorge until it sleeps. But that means so many deaths." "How many?" "Thousands. It wants thousands." Prudence looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "There has to be another way." I had an idea. A terrible, probably stupid idea. "What if we could feed it something else?" I said. "Not people, but the emotion it wants. Fear, desperation, hope. How? I don't know, but it's worth trying." I got out of the car, despite every instinct screaming at me to stay inside. The cold hit me like a physical force, and I could feel the attention of all those trapped women turn to me. You feed on fear, I said to the darkness. On desperation, on hope. What if we could give you all of that without taking lives? The women moved closer, surrounding me. Delilah stood directly in front of me, her face shifting between human and something else. You would sacrifice yourself? She had asked. If it would free them, yes. One life. For hundreds. Insufficient. The hunger requires more. Then what? What do you want? Spread the fear. Tell the story. Make them afraid. To travel alone. Make them desperate. For safety. Make them hope. For rescue. Feed us. With their emotions. No death. Just fear. You want me to spread panic? We want to survive. This is compromise. You become our herald. Spread the story. Spread the fear. We feed on the terror. No one dies. Everyone fears. It was horrible, but it was better than thousands of deaths. Maybe. And if I do this, you'll stop taking people? We will. Feed differently. On nightmares. Not lives. I looked at Prudence. She was pale, but nodded. What choice did we have? I'll do it, I said. The moment the words left my mouth, something changed. I felt a connection form, a cold thread linking me to the thing at mile marker 47. I could feel its hunger, its ancient need, and worse. I could feel all the women trapped within it. Their fear, their confusion, their desperate hope for release that would never come. The pact is made, the collective voice said. You are our voice now. Tell them what waits. Make them afraid. The women vanished. The temperature returned to normal, and Prudence and I were alone in an empty parking lot. But I could still feel them, still sense that cold thread connecting me to the hunger that lived at mile marker 47. What did you do? Prudence asked. What I had to. What we had to. And so I became something I never wanted to be, a spreader of fear, a teller of dark tales. I started this account to fulfill my end of the bargain, to spread the story of mile marker 47 and the things that wait there. Every person who reads this, who feels that chill of fear, feeds the thing a little. Every traveler who thinks twice before stopping alone at a truck stop gives it sustenance. Every nightmare about disappearing women provides nourishment. It's horrible. It's necessary. It's the deal I made to stop the killing. The disappearances have slowed but not stopped entirely. Sometimes the hunger grows too strong, and someone vanishes despite our pact. When that happens, I feel it through our connection. Another soul added to the collective, another voice in the chorus of the trapped. Prudence still searches for a way to free her sister, to break the cycle entirely. Dr. Blackwood continues his research, convinced that science can find a solution. The FBI still investigates, still searches for rational explanations for irrational events. And I keep driving. Every night I'm on the road. Every mile I carry the weight of what I know, what I've done. The CB radio crackles with normal trucker chatter, but underneath it I sometimes hear them. The voices of the women at mile marker 47, whispering their stories, begging to be remembered. I stop at truck stops and see women traveling alone, and I want to warn them. But my warnings are part of the fear that feeds the thing, so I stay silent and hope they'll be safe. I see the corner booths that every truck stop seems to have, always in the same spot, always with that same cracked vinyl, and I wonder if they're all connected somehow. all potential feeding grounds for something that exists between dimensions. The other truckers know something's different about me now. They see it in my eyes, the weight I carry. Some avoid me. Others seek me out, wanting to know if the stories are true. I tell them enough to make them cautious, but not enough to make them terrified. It's a delicate balance. Mags never came back to work at the Flying J. I heard she moved to Florida, as far from interstate truck stops as she could get. Can't say I blame her. Temperance still works there, though the Flying J has reopened under new management. She nods when she sees me, but doesn't speak. She knows what happened that night, saw the impossible, and wants no part of it. The corner booth remains empty most nights. Management has tried to remove it several times, but the contractors always find reasons to delay. Equipment failures, workers getting sick, permits mysteriously delayed. The booth remains, waiting. And sometimes when the conditions are right, new moon, 3 a.m., someone alone and afraid, they still appear. Delilah, Serafina, and all the others. They sit in their impossible spaces, hands wrapped around coffee cups that will never empty, never warm them. They look out at the world of the living with eyes full of longing and horror, trapped forever between life and death, feeding and being fed upon. I've thought about ending it, driving my truck off a bridge, taking myself out of the equation. But the connection I feel tells me it wouldn't matter. The pact would remain, the feeding would continue, just without anyone to monitor it, to ensure the terms are kept. So I drive, I witness, I remember. And I warn you now, if you're reading this, be careful at truck stops. Never sit alone in corner booths at 3 a.m. Travel in groups when you can. And if you see a woman who looks lost, who looks scared, who looks like she needs help, help her, but don't let her go to mile marker 47. Because the thing that lives there is always hungry, always waiting, always growing. And sometimes, despite our deal, despite my sacrifice, it still needs to feed the old way. The road stretches on forever, and I'll drive it until I die. Maybe then I'll join them, another voice in the collective, another warning ignored. Or maybe I'll finally be free of this burden, this knowledge that there are things in the darkness between dimensions that view humanity as nothing more than food. Either way, the women at mile marker 47 will remain, waiting in their corner booth, testimony to the fact that some hungers can never be satisfied, some places can never be safe, and some deals, once made, can never be broken. Drive safe. Don't stop alone. And whatever you do, don't look too closely at the corner booth at 3 a.m. You might see them looking back. The CB radio crackled to life at 2:17 a.m., somewhere between Cheyenne and Laramie on I-80. I'd been driving in silence for the past hour, enjoying the peace of an empty highway under a moonless sky. My name's Silas Freeman, been hauling freight for 22 years, and I'd learned long ago that sometimes the best company on a long haul is no company at all. Breaker, breaker, this is Night Owl looking for a radio check. Come back. Normal enough. I reached for the handset, more out of habit than any desire for conversation. Night Owl, this is Big Dog. You're coming in loud and clear, over. Thanks, Big Dog. You heading east or west? Westbound, about 30 miles out of Laramie. Copy that. I'm eastbound, just past mile marker 342. Watch out for bears around 355, saw 2 Smokies running radar. Appreciate the heads up, Night Owl. That should have been it. A typical exchange between truckers in the night. But then another voice cut in, weak and filled with static. 7, 7, 9, 2, 7, 7, 9, 2. The numbers repeated 3 times before fading into static. I waited for someone to acknowledge it, maybe ask if someone needed help, but the channel stayed quiet. After a moment, Night Owl came back on. Big Dog, you catch that? Yeah, weird. Probably someone with a busted radio. But something about those numbers stuck with me. The way they were spoken, flat, emotionless, almost mechanical. I grabbed the notebook I kept on my dashboard and jotted them down. 7792. The rest of the run to Salt Lake City was uneventful. I delivered my load of electronics, picked up a shipment of canned goods heading to Kansas City, and was back on the road by noon. It was 3 days later, on the return trip through Wyoming, when I heard the numbers again. This time it was around midnight, and I was actually engaged in a conversation with another driver, a guy calling himself Thaddeus Thunder. Ridiculous handle, but that's truckers for you. We were discussing the best truck stops for showers when the voice cut in. 7792, confirm. 7792, confirm. The channel went dead silent. Then Thaddeus spoke, his voice different, tense. You heard that, big dog? Yeah, same numbers as a few nights ago. You've heard it before? There was something in his voice, fear maybe, or recognition. 3 nights back. You know what it means? A long pause. Maybe nothing. Maybe something you don't want to know about. What's your 20? Just passing Rock Springs, heading east. I'm about 50 miles behind you. Listen, big dog, you seem like a decent guy, so I'm going to give you some advice. Turn your CB off for the next 100 miles. Why? Because sometimes you hear things on Channel 19 that aren't meant for everyone. Things that can get you in trouble if the wrong people think you're listening. What kind of trouble? But Thaddeus had already signed off. I kept my CB on, partly out of stubbornness and partly out of curiosity. For the next hour, nothing happened. Then, as I was approaching Rollins, the voices started. Not just one this time, but multiple voices, all speaking in that same flat, mechanical tone. Unit 47 confirms 7792. Unit 23 confirms 7792. Unit 91 confirms 7792. Then a different voice, still monotone but somehow carrying more authority. All units confirming 7792 proceed to Checkpoint Alpha. Cargo transfer at 0400. I glanced at my clock. 3:15 a.m. Whatever was happening, it would go down in 45 minutes. Every instinct told me to mind my own business, to take Thaddeus's advice and turn off the radio. But I've always been too curious for my own good. Checkpoint Alpha. That could mean anything, could be anywhere. But trucker slang is pretty standardized, and checkpoints usually referred to way stations. There was only one way station between Rollins and Laramie, and it had been closed for repairs for the past month. Or so the signs said. I was about 15 miles from the way station when I saw the lights. Not the usual DOT inspection lights, but something different. Portable floods, the kind construction crews use, set up around the supposedly closed facility. As I got closer, I could see trucks, maybe a dozen of them, parked in formation at the station. I should have kept driving, should have blown past at 70 miles per hour and pretended I hadn't seen anything. Instead, I pulled off at the last exit before the way station, found a spot where I could park with a view of the facility, and killed my lights. Through my binoculars, yes, I keep a pair in the cab for reading distant road signs, I could see movement around the trucks. Men in dark clothing, no uniforms I could recognize, moving with military precision. They were transferring something from several trucks into one larger refrigerated trailer. The containers they were moving were white, about the size of large coolers, and they handled them like they were fragile or dangerous. My CB crackled again. Unit 73, we have an observer, north side, approximately half a mile. My blood went cold. They'd spotted me. I dropped the binoculars and reached for my keys, but before I could start the engine, my driver's side door was yanked open. The man standing there was massive, 6'4" at least, built like a linebacker. He wore all black, including a ski mask that showed only his eyes. Those eyes were cold, professional. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." It wasn't a request. I climbed down, my hands visible, trying to stay calm. "I'm just taking a break," I said. "DOT regulations require—" "We know who you are, Silas Freeman. Truck number 4621, Iowa commercial driver's license. You've been listening to channels you shouldn't be monitoring." "I don't know what you're talking about. I just pulled off to rest." Another man approached, this one shorter but carrying himself with the kind of confidence that comes from being in charge. He pulled off his ski mask, revealing a weathered face with a prominent scar across his left cheek. "Mr. Freeman, my name is Augustus. Not my real name, of course, but it'll do for our purposes. You've stumbled into something you don't understand. Now, we can handle this two ways. The easy way is you forget what you've seen and heard, continue your route, and never speak of this to anyone. The hard way, well, truck accidents happen all the time on these mountain roads." "I haven't seen anything," I said quickly. "Just taking a break, like I said." Augustus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Smart man. But here's the thing. We know you've heard the numbers. Twice now. That makes you a liability." "I don't even know what the numbers mean." "No, you don't. And you're going to keep it that way. But first, we need to ensure your cooperation." He pulled out a phone, showed me the screen. It was a photo of a house I recognized, my ex-wife's house in Des Moines, where my kids lived. "Sarah and David, right? 16 and 14. Nice kids. Be a shame if their father had an accident." The threat was clear. I nodded slowly. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're going to get back in your truck, complete your run to Kansas City, and forget this ever happened. You're going to keep your CB on Channel 19, and if you hear the numbers again, you're going to ignore them. And if anyone asks you about unusual radio traffic, you know nothing. Clear?" "Clear." "Good." He stepped back, gesturing to my truck. "Drive safe, Mr. Freeman. The roads can be dangerous at night." I climbed back into my cab, started the engine with shaking hands, and pulled back onto the highway. In my mirrors, I could see them watching until I was out of sight. My mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. Whatever they were moving in those coolers, it was important enough to threaten my family over. The run to Kansas City felt like the longest of my life. Every set of headlights in my mirrors made me nervous. Every crackle on the CB made me jump, but nothing happened. I delivered my load, picked up another heading back west, and tried to convince myself it was over. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I was running a load of furniture from Denver to Omaha when I heard the numbers again. Different this time. 4, 2, 6, 8, 4, 2, 6, 8. Then the confirmation started rolling in. Different voices, different unit numbers, but the same mechanical tone. And then, "All units confirming 4268 proceed to Checkpoint Delta. Cargo transfer at 0300. Checkpoint Delta. I didn't know where that was, and I didn't want to know. I reached for the CB to turn it off, then stopped. Augustus had said to keep it on, to keep listening, but ignore what I heard. But what if this was a test? What if they were checking to see if I'd follow instructions? I left it on. Over the next few hours, I heard more coordinated chatter. Units reporting positions, confirming routes, discussing package integrity and temperature maintenance. Whatever they were moving, it required refrigeration and careful handling. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. "Unit 7-3, we have a problem. Package breach in Container 12. Nature of breach? Seal compromised. Possible contamination. Request immediate containment protocol. Negative 7-3. Proceed to disposal site Echo. Full incineration authorized. Copy that. ETA to Echo is 40 minutes. Disposal site Echo. Incineration. Whatever was in those containers, it was hazardous enough that a breach meant destroying the entire shipment. I thought about the refrigerated trucks, the careful handling, the level of security. What were they moving? Biological weapons? Toxic waste? Something worse? I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the truck passing me. It was one of them. I recognized the configuration. A Kenworth with a refrigerated trailer, no company markings. The driver was wearing a ski mask despite being alone in his cab. As he passed, I caught a glimpse of the trailer number, 73, Unit 73, the one with the breach. Without thinking, I followed him. Kept a good distance, 2 or 3 vehicles between us when possible, but stayed on his tail. He took an exit I didn't recognize, heading north on a state highway. After about 20 miles, he turned onto a dirt road. I pulled over, gave him a 5-minute head start, then followed. The road led to what looked like an abandoned industrial facility. Massive incinerators that hadn't been used in years, or so it appeared. But as I watched from a distance, hidden behind a stand of trees, I saw they were very much operational. The truck backed up to one of the buildings and several figures in hazmat suits emerged. They opened the trailer carefully, and I could see the container, white, just like the ones I'd seen before, but this one had a visible crack along one side. Something dark was leaking from it. They moved it with extreme caution to the incinerator. That's when the wind shifted, and I smelled it. Sweet, chemical, wrong. It made my head swim instantly, and I stumbled back to my truck, suddenly nauseous. Whatever was in that container, even a whiff from 100 yards away was enough to affect me. I managed to drive away without being seen, but that smell lingered in my nostrils for hours. That night, parked at a truck stop in North Platte, I made a decision that probably saved my life. I started documenting everything. I bought a dozen cheap notebooks from the truck stop store and started writing down everything I remembered. The numbers, the dates, the times, the locations. I sketched the trucks, noted their configurations, tried to identify patterns. And I kept listening to Channel 19, even though every transmission made my skin crawl. Over the next month, I heard the numbers 8 more times. Always different sequences, always followed by the same pattern of confirmations and checkpoint assignments. They were moving something along I-80 and I-76 using a network of supposedly closed or abandoned facilities. The transfers always happened between 3 and 4 a.m. when traffic was lightest, and whatever they were moving, it required extreme caution and refrigeration. I started noticing other things too. Truckers who would suddenly go quiet on the CB after hearing the numbers. Rigs that would take unexpected exits, following routes that made no commercial sense, and occasionally news reports about truckers who'd had accidents or disappeared, always guys who'd been known to monitor Channel 19 religiously. One name kept coming up in those reports: Jeremiah Hobbs. He'd been found dead in his cab at a rest stop in Iowa, apparent heart attack. But truckers who'd known him said he'd been healthy as a horse, and he'd been asking questions about strange radio transmissions in the days before his death. I knew I should stop, should forget everything and focus on my legitimate runs. But I couldn't. Maybe it was the threat to my kids that made me angry, or maybe it was just my stubborn nature, but I needed to know what they were moving. My chance came 3 weeks later. I was westbound on I-80, hauling a load of agricultural equipment to Sacramento, when I heard a transmission that broke the pattern. Emergency Protocol 7. Unit 39 is non-responsive. GPS shows position at mile marker 287, westbound shoulder. Possible medical emergency or mechanical failure. Unit 55 responding. ETA 12 minutes. Copy 55. If 39 is compromised, initiate clean protocol. No witnesses. Mile marker 287 was only about 10 miles ahead of me. If I pushed it, I could get there before Unit 55. It was stupid, risky, potentially suicidal. I pushed it. I found the truck exactly where they'd said. A Peterbilt with a refrigerated trailer, parked on the shoulder with its emergency flashers on. No sign of the driver. I pulled up behind it, grabbed my flashlight, and approached carefully. The driver's door was open. There was blood on the seat, not much, just a few drops. The keys were still in the ignition, engine running. On the dashboard was a clipboard with shipping manifests, but they were all in code, numbers and letters that meant nothing to me. I looked around. No other vehicles in sight yet. I had maybe 5 minutes before Unit 55 arrived. I made another stupid decision. I climbed into the cab and checked the trailer temperature gauge. Minus 20 degrees Celsius. Whatever was back there needed to stay frozen. I found the trailer keys on the clipboard and headed to the back. The lock was sophisticated, not your standard padlock. It took 3 different keys to open it. My hands were shaking as I worked the locks, constantly checking the road for approaching headlights. Finally, the last lock clicked open. I pulled the door open and was hit by a wave of frozen air. The interior light flickered on, revealing rows of those white containers, each about the size of a large cooler, strapped down and labeled with numbers. But in the back corner, one container was different. It was open. I approached it carefully, my flashlight beam cutting through the foggy, cold air. Inside the container, packed in dry ice, were smaller containers, medical specimen jars. And in those jars, I've seen a lot in my years on the road. Accidents that would make you sick, things that can't be unseen. But what was in those jars was different. They looked like organs, hearts maybe, or lungs, but wrong. Too large, wrong color, wrong structure. Like someone had tried to grow human organs but had gotten the blueprint slightly off. Each jar was labeled with a date and a location. The dates went back 2 years. The locations were all along I-80 and I-76. Small towns, truck stops, rest areas, places where people might go missing and not be noticed for a while. I took photos with my phone, as many as I could. Then I heard it. The rumble of an approaching truck. Unit 55 was early. I slammed the container shut, jumped out of the trailer, and managed to close and lock one of the 3 locks before the truck pulled up. I ran back to my rig, tossed the keys into the grass, and was climbing into my cab when 2 men approached. "Sir, this is a restricted area. You need to move along." I recognized the voice. It was the big guy from the way station encounter. I turned, trying to look confused and harmless. "Sorry, thought the driver might need help. Saw the flashers and pulled over. DOT regulations say we should check on fellow drivers in distress." He studied me for a long moment. "You didn't see anyone? Didn't enter the vehicle?" "No, sir. Just pulled up, saw the door open and no driver. Figured I should wait for the authorities." His partner was checking the trailer locks. "1 lock is secured, 2 are open," he called out. The big guy's hand moved to his hip where I could see the outline of a weapon under his jacket. "Mr. Freeman, we meet again." My blood went cold. He remembered me. "Twice is coincidence," he continued. 3 times is enemy action. You following us, Freeman?" "No, I swear. Just bad timing. I'm heading to Sacramento with a legit load. You can check my paperwork." He looked at me for a long moment, then at his partner who had opened the trailer and was checking inside. The partner gave a subtle shake of his head. Nothing missing or disturbed as far as he could tell. "Get out of here, Freeman. Now! And if I see you near one of our operations again, your kids won't have a father to visit on weekends. Understood?" I nodded and climbed into my cab. As I pulled away, I saw them in my mirrors, standing there watching until I was out of sight. My hands didn't stop shaking for 50 miles. That night, at a truck stop in Rock Springs, I uploaded the photos to 3 different cloud storage services and emailed copies to an encrypted account I'd set up. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I started researching the locations on those specimen jar labels. Every single location had missing person reports. Not a lot, just 1 or 2 per year. But the pattern was consistent. Truckers, lot lizards, drifters, people who wouldn't be missed immediately. People whose disappearances could be explained away as voluntary, as choosing to walk away from their lives. But the dates on the jars didn't always match the disappearance dates. Sometimes the jar date was days or even weeks after the person was reported missing, which meant they were being kept somewhere, alive, for a period of time before whatever resulted in those wrong organs in jars. I was in over my head. This wasn't just some smuggling operation or illegal waste disposal. This was something much worse. And I had no idea who to trust with the information. The police? The FBI? How did I know they weren't involved? Augustus and his people operated with impunity, using government-style communication protocols. They had to have some kind of official backing. I decided to reach out to the only community I trusted, other truckers. But I had to be careful. If Augustus was monitoring CB channels, I couldn't just broadcast what I knew. I needed a different approach. I started with the old-timers, guys who'd been driving these routes for decades. At truck stops, over coffee, I'd casually mention strange things on the radio, see who reacted. Most brushed it off, but a few got quiet, exchanged looks, changed the subject. Those were the ones who knew something. One of them, an old driver named Obadiah, who'd been hauling freight since the 1970s, pulled me aside one night at a Flying J in Des Moines. "You're asking dangerous questions, son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You know about the numbers? The cargo?" He nodded slowly. "Been going on for years. Different codes, different routes, but same operation. They call themselves the collectors." Collectors of what? Parts? Biological materials? For who or what, I don't know. But I've seen enough to know it ain't natural and it ain't right. He leaned closer. "You know about the Sandman?" "The Sandman?" "That's what we called him. Trucker who tried to expose this whole thing back in '98. Jebediah Morris. Had photos, recordings, even got a sample of what they were transporting. Went to the feds with it." "What happened?" "Found him in his cab a week later. Coroner said he'd been dead for days. But here's the thing. Other truckers saw him driving during those days. Saw him at truck stops, heard him on the CB. But when they found his body, the coroner said that was impossible. Said he'd been dead the whole time." "That doesn't make sense." "None of this makes sense, son. But after Jebediah, most of us learned to keep our mouths shut. The ones who didn't." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Accidents, heart attacks, disappearances. The collectors don't leave loose ends." "So we just let them continue?" Obadiah looked at me with tired eyes. "What else can we do? You go to the authorities, you end up like Jebediah. You try to stop them directly, you end up worse. Best you can do is warn people. Keep folks away from the checkpoints during transfer times. Save who you can without drawing attention." "There has to be something more we can do." "Maybe. But it won't be us who does it. We're just truckers, son. We haul freight, we mind our business, we try to get home safe. That's all we can do." But I couldn't accept that. Not after what I'd seen in those jars, not knowing that people were disappearing, being used for God knows what purpose. I started being more systematic in my surveillance. I tracked the number patterns, looking for a code. After weeks of analysis, I found it. The numbers weren't random. They were dates and locations, encoded using a simple substitution cipher. 72792 translated to October 15th, checkpoint Alpha. 4268 was November 3rd, checkpoint Delta. With this knowledge, I could predict when and where the transfers would happen. I thought about going to the media, but I had no proof that would stand up to scrutiny. Photos could be faked, recordings could be explained away. I needed something more. That's when I met Cornelius. He approached me at a truck stop in North Platte, sliding into my booth without invitation. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of nervous energy that made me immediately suspicious. "You're Silas Freeman," he said. It wasn't a question. "Who's asking?" "My name's Cornelius. Cornelius Jackson. My sister was Persephone Jackson." The name didn't ring a bell, and he must have seen that in my face. "She went missing from a rest stop on I-80 2 years ago," he continued. "The police said she ran away, but I know better. I've been investigating, and your name keeps coming up. Other truckers say you've been asking questions about disappearances." "I don't know anything about your sister, but you know about the collectors." I kept my face neutral, but he saw through it. "Please," he said, leaning forward. "I've lost everything trying to find out what happened to her. My job, my savings, my marriage. All I have left is the truth, and I think you know it." I studied him for a long moment. He could be genuine, or he could be one of Augustus's people testing me. But there was something in his eyes, a desperation I recognized. "Not here," I said finally. "Too public. You know the abandoned rest area at mile marker 332? He nodded. "Meet me there at midnight. Come alone, no weapons, no recording devices. If I see anything suspicious, I'm gone." "I'll be there." I spent the rest of the day second-guessing myself. This was stupid, potentially fatal. But if Cornelius was genuine, if he really had lost his sister to the collectors, then maybe together we could find a way to stop them. I arrived at the rest area 15 minutes early, parking my rig where I had clear sight lines in all directions. The place had been closed for years, the buildings boarded up, the parking lot cracked and overgrown. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, or an ambush. Cornelius arrived right on time, driving a beat-up Dodge pickup. He got out slowly, hands visible, and walked to the picnic area where I was waiting. "Thank you for meeting me," he started. "Before we talk, I need to know you're not wearing a wire." He nodded and lifted his shirt, turned in a circle. No wires, no recording devices that I could see. Either he was clean or he had equipment too sophisticated for me to spot. "Now you," he said. Fair enough. I showed him I wasn't wired either. "Okay," I said. "What do you know?" He pulled out a notebook, similar to the ones I'd been keeping. "I know there's an organization moving something in refrigerated trucks along the interstate. I know they communicate using coded numbers on CB Channel 19. I know people have been disappearing from truck stops and rest areas for years, and I know my sister was one of them." "How do you know that?" He flipped through his notebook, found a page. 3 days before she disappeared, she called me. Said she was at a truck stop in Nebraska, that her car had broken down. She was scared. Said there were trucks everywhere, men watching her. I told her to call the police, but she said she didn't trust them. Said she'd seen something she shouldn't have. What did she see? She wouldn't say on the phone, just kept saying, "They're not human," over and over. I thought she was having a breakdown, maybe drugs or something. I told her to stay put, that I'd come get her, but by the time I got there she was gone. Her car was still in the lot, her purse still in the front seat, but she was just gone. "What truck stop?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "The Flying J near Grand Island, mile marker 312. I knew that one. It had shown up in my research as a location with an unusually high number of missing persons over the years. Not enough to trigger an official investigation, but enough to form a pattern if you were looking for it. Cornelius, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to sound insane. Try me. I've been living with insane for 2 years. So I told him. Everything. The encounters with Augustus, the white containers, the organs in jars, the collectors. I showed him my notebooks, my photos, my maps of the checkpoint locations. He listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The organs. You said they looked wrong, like someone tried to grow human organs, but got it wrong." "Yeah, like they were using a corrupted blueprint or something. What if they're not trying to grow human organs? What if they're trying to grow something else and human organs are just the raw material? The thought sent a chill down my spine. For what purpose? I don't know. But my sister said they're not human. What if she meant that literally? What if the collectors aren't human? That's crazy. Is it? You've seen what they're transporting. You've seen how they operate. Military precision, advanced technology, complete disregard for human life. What if they're not from here? You mean like foreign agents? I mean like not from Earth. I wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as conspiracy theory nonsense. But I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen in those jars. Not after the way Augustus and his people moved and communicated, almost mechanical in their precision. Even if that's true, I said, what can we do about it? We're just two guys against an organization with unlimited resources and no oversight. We expose them, not to the authorities. They're probably compromised. We go directly to the people, upload everything online, send it to every news outlet, make it impossible to ignore. Jebediah Morris tried that. He ended up dead. Jebediah Morris was alone. He had no backup, no contingency plan. We'll be different. We'll set up dead man's switches. If something happens to us, everything gets released automatically. It was a decent plan, but it had one major flaw. We need more evidence. Photos of jars won't be enough. We need video of a transfer, clear footage of what they're moving, maybe even one of the containers. Cornelius smiled grimly. Then we'll get it. When's the next transfer? I checked my decoded notes. 3 nights from now, checkpoint Bravo, 3 a.m. Then that's when we make our move. We spent the next 3 days preparing. Cornelius had some technical skills. He set up hidden cameras we could mount on our vehicles, configured encrypted communication devices, even managed to get his hands on a drone with night vision capabilities. I used my trucker connections to gather intelligence, confirming that there was increased chatter about the upcoming transfer. The night of the operation, we positioned ourselves around Checkpoint Bravo, the abandoned rest area near Ogallala. I was parked at a truck stop 2 miles away, ready to drive by and capture footage. Cornelius was hidden in the woods near the rest area with the drone and backup cameras. At 2:45 a.m., the trucks started arriving. First 1, then 3, then 7. They arranged themselves in a specific pattern, forming a perimeter around one central refrigerated trailer. I started my run, timing it to pass by at exactly 3 a.m. Through my windshield camera, I captured it all. The men in black transferring containers, the precise coordination, the military-style efficiency. But then something unexpected happened. One of the containers was different, larger, requiring 4 men to carry it. And it was moving. Not being moved, the container itself was shifting, pulsing like something inside was trying to get out. I slowed down as much as I dared, trying to capture clear footage. That's when I saw him, Augustus, supervising the transfer. He looked up as I passed, and even from that distance, I swear he was looking right at me. My phone buzzed. A text from Cornelius. They've got some kind of jammer. Drone is down, but I got footage before it crashed. Getting out now. I picked him up at our predetermined rendezvous point, and we drove through the night, not stopping until we were 3 states away. In a motel room in Missouri, we reviewed the footage. Cornelius had captured something extraordinary before his drone was disabled. The large container had been opened briefly, and inside was something that defied explanation. It looked humanoid but wrong. Too tall, limbs too long, skin that seemed to shift and change color. It was alive, moving, and the men handling it were terrified of it. "What is that thing?" Cornelius whispered. "I don't know, but now we know why they need the organs. They're not growing them, they're feeding something." We spent the next week compiling everything into a comprehensive package. Videos, photos, documents, testimonies from other truckers who'd witnessed strange things. We set up the dead man's switches, uploaded encrypted copies to multiple servers, and prepared to go public. The night before we were going to release everything, Cornelius got a phone call. Unknown number. He put it on speaker. "Mr. Jackson." Augustus's voice was calm, almost friendly. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." "We have evidence of your crimes," Cornelius said, his voice shaking slightly. "Kidnapping, murder, whatever those things are you're transporting." "Mr. Jackson, you're operating under a misunderstanding. We're not criminals. We're protectors." "Protectors of what?" "Humanity. Those things, as you call them, they're not from here. They crashed in Wyoming in 1952. We've been managing the situation ever since." "Managing? You're feeding them people." "We're feeding them synthetic biological material grown from human stem cells. No one is being killed, Mr. Jackson. The missing persons, they're voluntary donors, compensated handsomely and relocated with new identities." "That's a lie. My sister—" "Your sister is alive, Mr. Jackson, living in Vancouver under a new name, with enough money to last several lifetimes. She can't contact you. That was part of the agreement. But she's safe." Cornelius was shaking now, tears streaming down his face. "You're lying. Check your email." Cornelius pulled out his phone, opened his email. There was a message with a video attachment. He played it, and I saw his face crumble. It was his sister, older but definitely her, holding up a recent newspaper saying she was okay, that she'd made a choice, that she was sorry she couldn't explain. "You see," Augustus continued, "we're not monsters. We're preventing an invasion. These beings, they're scouts. If they don't report back regularly, more will come. So we keep them alive, keep them fed, keep them contained. It's not pretty, but it's necessary." "Why should we believe you?" I interjected. "Because, Mr. Freeman, if we were the villains you think we are, you'd already be dead. We've known about your investigation for months. We've let you continue because we hoped you'd eventually understand. The secrecy isn't to protect us, it's to prevent panic." "So what now?" Cornelius asked, his voice broken. "Now you have a choice. Join us. Help us maintain the secrecy that keeps humanity safe, or walk away and never speak of this again. But if you release that information, if you cause a panic, the consequences will be catastrophic. Not from us, from them. Fear and chaos are what they're waiting for. It weakens the barriers we've built." The line went dead. Cornelius and I sat in silence for a long time. Everything we thought we knew had been turned upside down. Were they telling the truth? Was this really about protecting humanity? Or was it an elaborate lie to keep us from exposing them? "What do you think?" Cornelius finally asked. "I don't know, but that video of your sister could be fake. Deep fake technology, coercion, who knows? Or it could be real." We debated through the night, going over everything we'd learned, trying to separate fact from fiction. By morning, we'd reached a decision. We would investigate further, but quietly. No public release, not yet. We needed to know the truth. I went back to trucking, but now I was part of something bigger. Cornelius and I became unofficial monitors, tracking the collectors' movements, watching for any signs that their story was false. We reached out carefully to other truckers who'd witnessed things, building a network of observers. Months passed. The transfers continued, always at night, always in secret. But now that I knew what to look for, I saw other things. Government vehicles at the checkpoints, military personnel mixed in with the collectors. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was sanctioned at the highest levels. Then, one night, everything changed. I was monitoring Channel 19 when I heard it. Not the usual coded numbers, but a panicked voice. "Container breach at Checkpoint 7. Multiple breaches. They're out. Repeat. They're..." The transmission cut to static. Checkpoint 7 was new, not on my map. But based on the chatter that followed, I could triangulate it, somewhere near the Colorado-Kansas border. I was only 50 miles away. Against every instinct, I headed toward the chaos. The scene I found will haunt me forever. The checkpoint, another abandoned facility, was in flames. Trucks overturned, bodies scattered and moving through the smoke and fire, things that shouldn't exist. The beings from the containers, free and angry. I watched from a distance as military helicopters arrived, soldiers in full hazmat gear deploying. The battle was brief but intense. Whatever those things were, they were strong, fast, and hard to kill. But eventually the soldiers prevailed, though at a terrible cost. As dawn broke, I saw Augustus standing among the wreckage. He looked older, tired, defeated. He saw me watching and walked over. "Now you see," he said simply. "This is what we've been preventing for 70 years. One breach, 7 dead, and we barely contained it. Imagine if all of them got free." "How many are there?" I asked. 43 that we know of. Maybe more in stasis that we haven't found yet." He pulled out a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly as he lit it. "Their ship is still out there, buried in the Wyoming mountains. We can't destroy it. The technology is beyond us. We can't study it. Every team that's tried has disappeared. All we can do is manage the survivors and hope their kind never comes looking for them." "Why tell me this?" "Because we need people like you, observers, witnesses. The official teams are stretched thin, and we miss things. You truckers, you see everything on these roads. You're our early warning system, whether you know it or not." He handed me a card. Just a phone number, nothing else. "If you see something, call. Don't try to be a hero. Don't investigate. Just call." He walked away, back to the cleanup operation. I stood there, holding the card, watching them load the bodies, human and otherwise, into unmarked vehicles. That was 6 months ago. I still drive my routes, still monitor Channel 19, but now I'm part of something else, something I never asked for but can't walk away from. I've seen 3 more breaches, called in 4 suspicious situations, helped prevent God knows what catastrophes. Cornelius never found out if his sister was really safe. The video was all he got. He chose to believe it was real, that she was alive somewhere with a new identity. It was easier than the alternative. The other truckers in our network, we don't talk about it directly, but we watch, we listen, we report. We're the thin line between normal life and chaos, though most people will never know it. Sometimes, late at night on empty highways, I wonder what would happen if the truth got out. Would people panic? Would society collapse? Or would we adapt, like humans always do, and find a way to coexist with the knowledge that we're not alone, that there are things out there that want to use us for purposes we can't understand? I don't have answers. All I have is a CB radio, a truck, and a phone number I hope I never have to use again. But I keep listening to Channel 19, waiting for the next series of numbers, the next midnight transfer, the next reminder that the world is stranger and more dangerous than most people imagine, because someone has to. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 weeks before Christmas. Not on the CB, but on my personal cell phone. The number was blocked, but I recognized Augustus's voice immediately. "Freeman, we have a situation. How fast can you get to North Platte?" I was just outside of Des Moines, heading west with a load of electronics. 4 hours, maybe less if I push it. Push it. Checkpoint November. You know it? I didn't, but I could figure it out. I'll find it. There's been an incident, not a breach, something else. We need someone who knows the roads, knows the community, someone the locals might trust. What kind of incident? The kind we can't explain. 4 of our transport drivers are missing, along with their cargo. No distress signals, no breach protocols activated. They just vanished somewhere between Cheyenne and North Platte. Maybe they went rogue, decided to sell whatever they were carrying. Our drivers don't go rogue, Freeman. They're conditioned, monitored, tracked. Something took them. Something. not someone. There was a pause. Just get here. The line went dead. I looked at my GPS, calculated the fastest route to North Platte. My legitimate delivery would be late, but something in Augustus's voice told me this was more important. I made it in 3.5 hours, burning through diesel and probably earning myself a few speeding tickets from the automated cameras. Checkpoint November turned out to be an old grain processing facility, long abandoned, about 15 miles outside of North Platte. The place was swarming with activity, but not the usual collector personnel. These were different, military types, but not regular army. Special forces, maybe, or some black ops unit that didn't officially exist. Augustus met me at the gate. "Freeman, good, you made it." He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. "I need you to listen to something." He led me to a command vehicle, essentially a mobile communications center packed with electronics. A technician played back a CB transmission, time-stamped from 3 nights ago. It started with the normal coded numbers, units confirming, standard collector protocol. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the pattern broke. Unit 27 experiencing interference, something on the road ahead. Clarify interference, 27. Lights, multiple lights, not vehicles. They're above the road, moving in formation. 27, initiate protocol 9. Reroute immediately. Negative command. They're surrounding us. All units, they're... The transmission cut to static, but not normal static. There was something underneath it, a pattern, almost like voices, but at a frequency that hurt to listen to. All 4 trucks went dark simultaneously, Augustus explained. GPS, radio, even the biometric monitors on the drivers. Everything just stopped. And the cargo? Gone. Trucks were found abandoned on different stretches of highway, all within a 50-mile radius. Engines running, doors open, no sign of struggle. But Freeman, here's the strange part. He pulled up photos on a tablet. The insides of the truck cabs were covered in some kind of crystalline substance, like frost, but geometric, forming perfect patterns. We've analyzed it. It's not ice. It's not any substance we can identify. It phases in and out of our dimension. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. What do you think happened? Augustus looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Fear. I think something else knows about our cargo. Something that's not from the same place as the beings we're containing. You mean there's more than one group of... whatever they are? Freeman, the universe is vast and full of things we don't understand. We've been so focused on containing one threat that we never considered we might attract the attention of another. He handed me a CB radio, a special one with additional frequencies and encryption capabilities. I need you to do what you do best. Drive your route, listen to the chatter, but now you're listening for something specific. Any unusual transmissions, any truckers reporting strange lights, anything that breaks the pattern. Why me? You have teams of professionals. Because truckers trust truckers. They'll tell you things they won't tell us. And because you've already proven you can see things others miss. I took the radio. What am I looking for exactly? Patterns. The 4 missing drivers all reported seeing lights before they vanished. Other truckers must have seen something too. Find them. Talk to them. Get their stories. I spent the next 3 days driving the routes where the trucks had disappeared, stopping at every truck stop, every diner, every place where drivers gathered. Most hadn't seen anything or wouldn't admit to it. But a few opened up, especially after a beer or 2. Bartholomew, an old-timer who'd been driving for 40 years, told me about lights he'd seen near Kimball. Like stars, but moving wrong. Stopping, starting, changing direction instantly. No aircraft can move like that. Magnolia, one of the few female long haulers on this route, described something similar near Sydney. They followed me for 20 miles. Just lights at first. Then I saw the shape behind them. Triangular, black, big as a football field. It made no sound. Each story added a piece to the puzzle. The sightings formed a pattern, a corridor along I-80 where these things, whatever they were appearing with increasing frequency. Then I met Jebediah. Not the Jebediah Morris who died in '98, but his son, Jebediah Jr. He was young, maybe 25, driving his father's old route like some kind of memorial. "My dad saw them," he said when I carefully brought up the subject of strange lights. "Not just the collectors, but the others. The watchers." Watchers? That's what he called them in his final journal. Beings that observe, record, but don't interfere. Until now. "Your father kept journals?" Jebediah Jr. nodded and pulled out a worn notebook. "This was his last one. The FBI returned it to us after he died, said it was just the ravings of a sick man, but I know better." He let me read it. The entries were disturbing, describing encounters with beings that didn't match the creatures the collectors were transporting. These were different, energy-based, existing partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. They could move through solid matter, manipulate electronics, and according to Jebediah Sr., they could influence human minds. One entry stood out. "They're harvesting something from the cargo. Not the biological material, but something else. Energy, maybe, or information encoded at a quantum level. They wait for the transfers, then take what they need. The collectors don't even know they're there." I photographed the journal pages with my phone and sent them to Augustus. His response was immediate. "Bring the sun, now." I convinced Jebediah Jr. to come with me to Checkpoint November. Augustus was waiting with a team of scientists who immediately began questioning him about his father's journals. While they talked, Augustus pulled me aside. "This confirms our worst fears. We're not dealing with one alien presence, but at least two. And they're using us." "Using us how?" "The beings we're transporting, the ones we've been feeding, they're not just scouts. They're bait. The real threat has been using them to study us, to understand our biology, our technology, our weaknesses. So all this time, the collectors have been doing exactly what these watchers wanted?" "It appears so. We've been played, Freeman. 70 years of thinking we were protecting humanity, and we were actually gathering specimens for something else." Before I could respond, alarms started blaring. The technician at the communication station was frantically working his equipment. "Sir, we have multiple incidents. Lights reported at checkpoints 3, 5, and 7. And, sir, Unit 11 is transmitting." "That's impossible," Augustus said. "Unit 11 was one of the missing trucks." "I know, sir, but it's definitely their transponder. They're requesting clearance to return to base." Augustus grabbed the radio. "Unit 11, this is command. Identify yourself." The voice that responded wasn't human. It was mechanical, multitonal, like someone had taken a human voice and shattered it into pieces. "We return what was taken. Study complete. Exchange initiated." "Exchange? What exchange?" "Your specimens for our knowledge. Agreed terms from the beginning. We made no such agreement. Not you. Your predecessors. 1952. The terms were clear." Augustus went pale. He turned to one of his aides. "Get me the 1952 files. Everything about the initial contact." While they scrambled to retrieve historical documents, Unit 11 continued its approach. On the GPS, we could see it moving at impossible speeds, covering distances that should have taken hours in minutes. "Sir," the technician said, "units at Checkpoint 3 are reporting that the cargo containers are changing. The specimens inside are becoming active." "All of them?" "Yes, sir. All 43 containers across all locations." Augustus made a decision that surprised me. He turned to me and Jebediah Jr. "You two need to leave. Now. Get as far from here as possible." "What's happening?" I asked. "The exchange. Whatever deal was made in 1952, the bill has come due. and I don't think we're going to like the terms. But before we could leave, Unit 11 arrived. The truck materialized, there's no other word for it, in the middle of the compound. It looked like the missing vehicle, but wrong. The metal was covered in the same crystalline substance from the photos, and it seemed to phase in and out of reality. The doors opened, and the 4 missing drivers stepped out. But they weren't themselves anymore. Their eyes were black, their movements too smooth, too coordinated. They spoke in unison. "The harvest is complete. The specimens have served their purpose. We take what was promised." "We don't understand," Augustus said, stepping forward. "What was promised?" One of the changed drivers, I recognized him as a man I'd shared coffee with just a month ago, pulled out a document. It was old, yellowed, stamped with classification markings from the 1950s. Augustus read it, his face growing more horrified with each line. "No," he whispered. "They couldn't have agreed to this." "What does it say?" I demanded. He looked at me with hollow eyes. "In exchange for containing the crashed beings, for keeping them secret and fed, we would be given time, 70 years to prepare. After that, the beings would be reclaimed and a selection would be made." Selection? 1/10 of humanity, to be taken for study, for preservation, for God knows what. The government in 1952 agreed to it, thinking they'd find a way out before the deadline. And now the deadline is here. The changed drivers nodded in unison. "The selection begins at dawn. Do not interfere. The agreement is binding." They walked back to the truck, which shimmered and vanished, leaving only the smell of ozone and that crystalline residue. The compound erupted in chaos. Military personnel ran to their stations, scientists frantically worked their equipment, and Augustus stood in the middle of it all, looking lost. "We have 6 hours," he said finally. 6 hours to figure out how to stop something we don't understand, that we can barely perceive, from taking 10% of the human population. "How do we fight them?" someone asked. "We don't," Augustus replied. "We can't. They exist partially outside our dimension. Our weapons are useless." "Then what do we do?" Augustus looked at me and Jebediah Jr. "We do what humans have always done when faced with the impossible. We adapt, we survive, and we hope that some of us make it through to warn the others." He handed us each a package, documents, hard drives, everything the collectors had learned over 70 years. "Get this to people who can use it. Scientists, governments, anyone who might find a way to resist or at least understand what's happening. The collectors are finished, but humanity's fight is just beginning." We took the packages and ran to our vehicles. As I started my truck, I saw the first lights appearing on the horizon. Not sunrise, it was still hours away, but something else. Ships, hundreds of them, descending from the sky. I drove through the night, CB radio crackling with panicked reports from truckers across the country. Strange lights, vehicles being stopped, people disappearing. The selection had begun. I met up with Cornelius at a predetermined location, gave him one of the packages. We decided to split up, increase our chances of getting the information to someone who could use it. "Is this really happening?" he asked. "It is. And it's going to get worse." He nodded, understanding. We'd both lost people to the collectors, thought we understood the threat. But this was bigger, older, more complex than we'd imagined. As I drove away, I turned on Channel 19 one last time. Instead of the usual chatter, there was a message repeating in that mechanical, multi-tonal voice. "Do not resist. Selection is random. Compliance ensures survival for the majority. This is the agreement." I turned it off and kept driving. I had information to deliver, people to warn, though I didn't know if it would make any difference. The world was about to change in ways we couldn't imagine. But I'm a trucker. I haul cargo from point A to point B. And right now, My cargo is the truth about what's been happening on our highways for 70 years, and what's about to happen to our world. I don't know if anyone will believe me. I don't know if it matters. But I'll keep driving, keep talking to anyone who will listen, keep hoping that somewhere in the documents Augustus gave me is the key to fighting back. The highway stretches out before me, empty now as people huddle in their homes, watching the lights in the sky. But I keep moving, because that's what I do. I'm a trucker, and I've got a delivery to make, even if it might be my last. The digital clock on my dashboard glowed 2:34 a.m. when I pulled into Rest Area 82 on I-70, just outside of Salina, Kansas. I'd been driving for 9 hours straight, pushing the legal limit, hauling a load of refrigerated beef from Denver to Kansas City. My name's Bartholomew Cross, and I've been running this route for the better part of 12 years. Rest Area 82 was my usual stop. Quiet, well-lit, and typically empty at this hour except for a few other long haulers catching their mandatory rest. That night in early October was different from the moment I pulled off the highway. The parking lot was fuller than usual, maybe 15 or 16 trucks instead of the normal 5 or 6. But it wasn't the number that caught my attention, it was the arrangement. The trucks were parked in a rough circle around the far end of the lot, away from the rest area facilities, their trailers forming an almost perfect barrier. I found a spot closer to the building, figuring whatever those drivers were doing was their business. Maybe it was some kind of informal trucker gathering, though I'd never seen one arranged quite like that. I set my parking brake, logged my stop in the electronic logbook, and decided to stretch my legs and use the facilities before catching some sleep. The rest area building was typical government construction: cinder blocks painted beige, fluorescent lighting that hurt your eyes, and that peculiar smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with years of travel weariness. The vending machines hummed in the corner, and a few picnic tables sat under a covered area outside. Everything normal, except for the feeling in my gut that something was off. I was washing my hands when another trucker walked in. An older guy, probably in his 60s, with the kind of weathered face that comes from decades of staring down highways. His name patch read Obadiah. "Interesting night for a stop," he said, glancing at me in the mirror. "Seems busier than usual," I replied, trying to gauge if he knew something I didn't. He dried his hands slowly, seeming to weigh his words. "You been driving this route long?" 12 years. "Ever see trucks arranged like that before?" He nodded toward the window that overlooked the parking lot. "Can't say I have. Some kind of meeting?" Obadiah shook his head. "That's what I thought at first, but I've been watching for the past hour. No one's gotten out of those trucks, no one's gone in. They're just sitting there, engines running, waiting." "Waiting for what?" "That's the million-dollar question, ain't it?" He left without another word, and I followed him out a minute later. Instead of heading straight back to my truck, I walked to the edge of the building where I could get a better view of the circle of trucks. Obadiah was right. No movement, no drivers visible, just the low rumble of idling engines and the occasional hiss of air brakes. I was about to head back to my rig when I saw headlights approaching from the highway. Not from the exit ramp, but from the opposite direction, coming up the on-ramp the wrong way. A plain white van, no markings, no plates that I could see in the darkness. It pulled into the center of the truck circle and stopped. The van's doors opened and 4 people got out. Even from a distance, something about them seemed wrong. They moved too precisely, too coordinated, like they were synchronized. They were all wearing dark clothing and each carried what looked like a small cooler, the kind you might use for medical supplies or biological samples. One of the truck doors opened, a freightliner with Tennessee plates, and the driver climbed down. But he didn't walk like a trucker who'd been sitting for hours. His movement was fluid, alert, almost military. He met the 4 from the van in the center of the circle. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the exchange. The coolers were handed over, and in return, the trucker gave them something that looked like a thick envelope. Cash, probably, though I couldn't be sure from that distance. Then things got interesting. The back doors of 3 of the surrounding trucks opened simultaneously. More people emerged, all moving with that same synchronized precision. They formed a line from the van to one specific truck, a refrigerated trailer with muddy plates I couldn't read. What happened next made me duck behind a concrete barrier. They started unloading the van, but not normal cargo. These were long rectangular containers, almost like oversized coffins, but made of some kind of metallic material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each container took 4 people to carry, and they handled them like they were fragile or dangerous. I pulled out my phone, thinking I should call the police, but there was no signal. Not unusual for rural Kansas, but the timing felt convenient. I tried to take photos instead, but the distance and darkness made everything come out blurry and useless. 7 containers were transferred from the van to the refrigerated truck. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the operation was over. The people returned to their vehicles, the van drove off the wrong way down the on-ramp, and one by one the circle of trucks began to disperse. I stayed hidden until most of them had left, then made my way back to my truck. My hands were shaking as I climbed into the cab. Whatever I just witnessed, it wasn't legal. You don't transfer cargo in the middle of the night at a rest stop unless you're trying to avoid attention. And those containers, something about them made my skin crawl. I should have left it alone, should have driven away and forgotten what I'd seen. But I've always been too curious for my own good. So instead of leaving, I waited. The refrigerated truck with the mysterious cargo was still there, parked now in a normal spot, the driver apparently settling in for his mandatory rest period. I gave it an hour, then quietly got out of my truck and walked past the refrigerated trailer. Up close, I could hear the refrigeration unit running, but there was something else, a sound underneath the mechanical hum. It was rhythmic, almost like breathing, but that was impossible. Refrigerated trailers don't breathe. The trailer had unusual modifications, extra ventilation ports that weren't standard, and what looked like monitoring equipment attached to the side. There was a small window in the rear door, covered from the inside but not completely. Through a tiny gap, I could see a faint green glow. I was leaning in for a closer look when a hand grabbed my shoulder. "You lost, friend?" I spun around to find myself face to face with the driver of the refrigerated truck. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of build that suggested he did more than just drive for a living. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Just heading back to my truck," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thought I heard something strange." "Lots of strange noises at night," he said, not releasing my shoulder. "Best not to investigate. Sometimes curiosity can be unhealthy. I'll keep that in mind." He studied me for a long moment, then let go. "What's your name, driver?" "Bartholomew. Bartholomew Cross." "Well, Bartholomew, I'm going to give you some free advice. Forget whatever you think you saw tonight. Go back to your truck, get some sleep, and in the morning, continue your route. Don't look back, don't ask questions, and definitely don't go poking around other people's cargo. Understood?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good. Because the people I work for, they value their privacy, and they have long memories and longer reaches. You have family, Bartholomew?" "A daughter," I admitted before I could stop myself. "Clementine, right? Pretty name. Lives in Topeka with your ex-wife. Sophomore at Washburn University studying nursing." My blood went cold. "How do you—" "Like I said, long reaches. Now, are we going to have a problem, or are you going to be smart?" "No problem," I said quickly. "I didn't see anything." "That's right, you didn't. Have a safe trip, Bartholomew." I walked back to my truck on unsteady legs, locked the doors, and sat in the dark for a long time. How did he know about Clementine? How did he know about my ex-wife? Who were these people? I didn't sleep that night, just sat there, watching the refrigerated truck through my mirrors, waiting for dawn. When the first light started to creep across the Kansas plains, the truck pulled out, heading east on I-70. I waited another hour before following, keeping my distance but staying on the same route. The truck took the exit for Topeka. My exit. The one that led to my daughter's university. Now I had no choice but to follow. The refrigerated truck didn't go to the university, thank God. Instead, it headed to an industrial area on the outskirts of town, pulling into a warehouse complex that looked mostly abandoned. I parked a quarter-mile away and watched through binoculars as the trailer was backed up to a loading dock. More people emerged from the warehouse, all with that same coordinated movement I'd noticed at the rest area. They began unloading the containers, taking them inside quickly and efficiently. The whole operation took less than 20 minutes. I wrote down the warehouse address, took what photos I could from that distance, and then got out of there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled onto something big, something dangerous. The threat against my daughter kept me from going to the police, but I had to do something. That's when I remembered Thaddeus Thunder Fitzgerald, a trucker I'd known for years who had a reputation for being connected, for knowing things. If anyone could tell me what I'd witnessed, it would be him. I found Thunder at a truck stop outside of Columbia, Missouri, 2 days later. He was holding court at a corner booth, regaling younger drivers with stories of the old days when regulations were looser and the money was better. When he saw me, his expression grew serious. "Bartholomew Cross," he said, waving the others away. "Heard you've been asking questions you shouldn't be asking. News travels fast. Faster when it involves certain subjects. Sit down, keep your voice low, and tell me what you saw." I told him everything. The circle of trucks, the containers, the warehouse in Topeka. Thunder listened without interrupting, his face growing more concerned with each detail. "You've stepped in it now, haven't you?" he said when I finished. "Those containers you saw, you have any idea what was in them?" "No, but something that needed refrigeration and special ventilation." Thunder leaned in closer. "I'm going to tell you something, and then you're going to forget I told you. There's a network, been operating for about 5 years now. They move special cargo, the kind that can't go through normal channels. Sometimes it's organs for the black market. Sometimes it's things that aren't supposed to exist." "Things?" "Research subjects, biological materials, things that certain pharmaceutical companies and research facilities need but can't legally obtain. They pay top dollar for drivers who don't ask questions and cargo that doesn't officially exist. And if someone does ask questions, then they become a problem that needs solving. You're lucky they just threatened you. Others who've gotten too curious have had accidents. Brake failures on mountain roads, jackknife trailers in bad weather, mysterious fires in sleeper cabs. So I should just forget about it?" Thunder was quiet for a moment. "That would be the smart play. But you're not going to do that, are you? I can see it in your eyes. You're like me. Once you know something's wrong, you can't let it go. My daughter is safer if you handle this right. These people, they're professionals, but they're also practical. They don't want attention. If you can make yourself more trouble than you're worth without directly confronting them, they'll move on." "How do I do that?" Thunder smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You document everything, but you don't go to the cops. You build a file, create insurance, then you let them know you have it, and that if anything happens to you or your family, it gets released. Mutually assured destruction." "That's insane." "That's survival in the gray zones, my friend. Welcome to the part of trucking they don't tell you about in driving school." I took Thunder's advice and started building my file. Every suspicious truck movement, every late-night transfer I heard about through the trucker grapevine, every warehouse and rest area that served as a meeting point. Within a month, I had 3 notebooks full of information and a hidden USB drive with photos and videos. but I also kept driving my regular routes, acting normal, pretending I'd forgotten about that night at Rest Area 82. The refrigerated truck driver, I'd learned his name was Silas Crane, seemed to have bought it. I saw him twice at truck stops along I-70, and both times he just nodded like we were casual acquaintances, nothing more. It was on a cold November night, 6 weeks after the initial incident, that everything escalated. I was at a Flying J in Junction City, Kansas, grabbing coffee and preparing for another overnight haul, when a woman approached me. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and the kind of nervous energy that made her stand out in a room full of tired truckers. "You're Bartholomew Cross?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who's asking?" "My name's Evangeline Porter. I was a medical student at KU. I need your help." "Lady, I don't know you, and I definitely can't help you with whatever—" "I know about the containers," she interrupted. "The ones being moved through Rest Area 82. I know what's in them." I glanced around the truck stop, suddenly very aware of every face, every potential threat. "Not here. Too public." "Where?" "My truck. 5 minutes. Blue Peterbilt, spot 47. She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. I paid for my coffee, bought a few unnecessary items to look casual, then made my way to my truck. She was already there, huddled in the shadows beside the cab. I unlocked the passenger door and gestured for her to get in. Once we were both inside with the doors locked, I turned to face her. "Start talking." "I was doing my residency at a private research facility in Topeka," she began, her hands shaking as she pulled out a folder of documents. "Excelsior Medical Research. On paper, they were developing new anti-rejection drugs for organ transplants. But that wasn't what they were really doing." She handed me a photograph. It was grainy, taken in low light, but I could make out what looked like an operating room. On the table was something that made my stomach turn, a human body, but wrong, modified, extra organs where there shouldn't be any. "They were growing organs," she continued. "Not in labs, but in living hosts. Homeless people, addicts, people who wouldn't be missed. They'd grab them, pump them full of drugs and modified stem cells, and turn them into living organ farms. That's insane. It's lucrative. A heart on the black market goes for $1 million. A liver, half that. And these weren't normal organs. They were enhanced, designed to be universal donors, no rejection risk. One host could produce multiple organs before—" She trailed off. "Before they died." She nodded. "The ones who survived the initial procedures were kept in those containers you saw, refrigerated to slow their metabolism, keep the organs fresh. They were being transported to buyers across the country. And you were part of this?" "No, God, no. I discovered it by accident. Took a wrong turn in the facility, ended up in a restricted area. When I realized what I was seeing, I tried to document it, to gather evidence. But they caught me. So, how are you here?" She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a series of surgical scars. "I was supposed to be the next host. They'd already started the procedures when I managed to escape during a shift change. I've been running for 2 weeks, trying to find someone who would believe me, someone who could help." "Why me?" "Because you've been investigating them. I hacked into their communication system before I ran. They've been monitoring you, discussing what to do about the Bartholomew problem. You're already on their radar, which means you're already in danger." I felt a chill run down my spine. "They're watching me?" "Not constantly, but regularly. They know your routes, your stops, your habits. But here's the thing. They're scared of you." "Scared? Of me?" "Of what you might know, what you might have documented. They found out about your insurance file, the one Thunder told you to create. They don't know what's in it, but they know it exists. That's the only reason you're still alive." I thought about my notebooks, my photos, suddenly feeling like they were woefully inadequate against something this big. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want to stop them, but I can't do it alone. I need someone who knows the roads, knows the network, someone who can help me track their shipments, document their operations, build a case that's so airtight even their paid-off officials can't ignore it." "You're talking about taking on an organization that's operating across multiple states, has unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. That's suicide." "Maybe, but doing nothing is worse. How many people are suffering right now because we're too scared to act?" She had a point, but I thought about Clementine, about the threat against my family. "I have a daughter," I said. "I know. They use that against all their potential problems. But think about this. What kind of world are you leaving for her if groups like this can operate with impunity?" Before I could respond, my CB radio crackled to life. It was a voice I recognized, Silas Crane. "Bartholomew Cross, I know you're listening, and I know you have a guest. Miss Porter, you've caused us considerable inconvenience." Evangeline went pale. I grabbed the handset. "What do you want, Silas?" "Simple. A trade. Miss Porter for your daughter's continued safety. You have 1 hour to drive to Rest Area 82. Come alone with Miss Porter. Any deviation, any attempt to involve law enforcement, and Clementine has a very unfortunate accident on her way to class tomorrow morning." The radio went dead. Evangeline was shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to drag you into this." "You didn't. I was already in it." I started the truck. "But we're not going to Rest Area 82. "But your daughter. My daughter is safe. I moved her and my ex-wife to my brother's place in Colorado 2 weeks ago, told them it was for a family emergency. They don't know that. So what do? We flip the script. They want us at Rest Area 82? Fine. But we're going to make sure we're not alone." I pulled out my phone and started making calls. Thunder first, then Obadiah, then Cornelius, then every trucker I knew who'd been keeping tabs on these midnight transfers. Within 20 minutes, I had 15 drivers ready to converge on Rest Area 82. "They won't fight 15 witnesses," I told Evangeline. "These people rely on secrecy. We take that away. We take away their power." But I underestimated them. We arrived at Rest Area 82 45 minutes later. The parking lot was empty except for 3 vehicles: the white van from before, Silas's refrigerated truck, and a black SUV with tinted windows. No sign of my trucker allies. "Where is everyone?" Evangeline asked. "I don't know. They should be here by now." We parked at the far end of the lot, engine running, doors locked. Silas got out of his truck and walked to the middle of the parking area, hands visible, seemingly unarmed. "Just me, Bartholomew," he called out. "No tricks, no ambush, just a conversation." I looked at Evangeline. "Stay in the truck. Doors locked. If something happens, drive. Don't look back." "Bartholomew, promise me." She nodded reluctantly. I got out, leaving the engine running, and walked toward Silas. "Where are the others?" I asked when we were about 20 feet apart. "The other truckers? They've been delayed. Highway Patrol found reasons to pull each of them over. Amazing what a few well-placed phone calls can accomplish. You can't keep doing this. People know. It's only a matter of time before someone you can't buy or threaten exposes you." "Perhaps. But that's not today's problem. Today's problem is Miss Porter. She has information that doesn't belong to her, and she needs to return it. She's not going anywhere with you." "I'm not asking her to. We've decided she's more trouble than she's worth. But we need assurance that what she knows dies with her." "You're going to kill her?" "No, Bartholomew. You are." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "It's simple. You kill Miss Porter, here, now, and your involvement in this ends. Your daughter stays safe, you go back to your routes, and everyone forgets this unfortunate chapter." "You're insane." "I'm practical. You won't do it, of course. You're too moral, too principled. which is why I brought insurance." He gestured to the SUV. The back door opened and someone was pushed out. Even in the dim light, I recognized her immediately. Clementine, my daughter. "Dad?" Her voice was terrified, confused. "You said she was safe if I came here." "I said she'd have an accident if you didn't come. You came. Now you have a choice. Miss Porter's life for your daughter's. You have 60 seconds to decide." My mind raced. How had they found her? How had they gotten to Colorado and back so quickly? None of it mattered now. My daughter was here, in danger, and I had to make an impossible choice. That's when I heard them. Engines. Lots of them. Not trucks, but motorcycles. They roared into the rest area from both entrances, at least 30 bikes, surrounding us in a circle of headlights and noise. The riders were all wearing identical patches, Prudence's Angels, with the image of a woman's face below it. They killed their engines in unison, and one of them, a woman built like a linebacker, removed her helmet. "Silas Crane," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent parking lot. "We've been looking for you." Silas's confidence evaporated. "Who are you?" "Prudence Walsh was my sister. You remember her? 23 years old, grabbed from a rest stop in Iowa, turned into one of your science experiments. She died screaming your name." "I don't know what you're talking about." "No? Then you won't mind if we check your truck. See what kind of cargo you're hauling tonight." More bikers dismounted, moving toward the refrigerated truck. Silas's hand went to his waistband, but thought better of it when several bikers produced weapons of their own. "This is kidnapping," he said, gesturing to Clementine. "This girl is free to go," the biker leader said. "Aren't you, sweetheart?" Clementine ran to me, and I held her tight, feeling her shake against me. The biker woman turned her attention to me. "Bartholomew Cross, we know who you are. Know you've been tracking these bastards. The information you've gathered, we need it." "Who are you people?" "Families of the victims. Took us 2 years to organize, to find each other, to track down the network. Your friend Thunder told us about tonight. Said you might need backup." Thunder. I should have known he had contingencies. "What about Evangeline, the woman in my truck?" "She's the one who contacted us originally, through encrypted channels. Brave woman. She stays with you, helps us build the case. These others," she gestured to Silas and his associates, now surrounded by angry bikers. "They're coming with us. You can't just take them. Watch us. You know what they've done. You know what they deserve. The law won't touch them. They own too many judges, too many cops. But we're not the law." Silas tried to run. He made it about 10 feet before one of the bikers clotheslined him with a metal pipe. He went down hard and didn't get back up. "Load them up," the leader ordered. "All of them." The bikers moved with practiced efficiency, zip-tying hands, loading Silas and his people into the van they'd arrived in. Within minutes, they were ready to leave. "What will you do with them?" I asked. "Nothing they don't deserve, but they won't be moving cargo anymore, I can promise you that." She handed me a card with just a phone number. "When you're ready to share what you know, call us. We'll make sure it gets to the right people, the clean ones who can actually do something." "And if they come after me? My family?" "They won't. After tonight, their organization will have bigger problems. We're hitting every warehouse, every transfer point simultaneously. By dawn, their network will be in ruins." The bikers roared off into the night, taking Silas and the others with them. I stood there in the sudden quiet, holding my daughter, trying to process what had just happened. Evangeline got out of the truck, approaching cautiously. "Are they gone?" "Yeah, they're gone." "Who were those people?" "Justice," I said. "Or vengeance. Maybe both." We drove through the night, Clementine sleeping in the back of the cab, Evangeline navigating. I didn't know where we were going, just away from Rest Area 82, away from the nightmare we'd been living. The news broke 3 days later. simultaneous raids on medical facilities in 6 states, dozens of arrests, and the discovery of what the media carefully called extensive human trafficking and illegal organ harvesting operations. They didn't mention the modified humans, the living organ farms, or the network of truckers who'd been unknowingly transporting them. Those details were too horrific for public consumption. I was holed up in a motel outside of Denver with Evangeline and Clementine, watching the coverage on a flickering television. My ex-wife had come to get Clementine that morning, tearful and angry and demanding explanations I couldn't fully give. I told her enough to satisfy her that the danger was past, but not enough to give her nightmares. "They're not mentioning Excelsior," Evangeline noted, studying her laptop. "The facility in Topeka isn't on any of the raids lists." "Maybe they missed it?" She shook her head. "No, look at this." She turned the screen toward me. The Excelsior Medical Research Building was on fire, massive flames visible from miles away. Started around 3 a.m. By the time fire crews arrived, there was nothing left to save. They're calling it an electrical malfunction. Prudence's angels? Has to be. They're destroying the evidence. Or making sure those things can't be recreated. We sat in silence for a moment, both thinking about what might have been in that building when it burned. Research, certainly. Equipment. But also maybe victims who couldn't be saved. Hosts too far gone to return to normal life. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Bartholomew Cross?" "Speaking. My name is Agent Augustus Freeman, FBI. We need to talk about what you've documented over the past 2 months." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mr. Cross, we're not looking to prosecute you. We need your information to build cases against the surviving members of the network. Your detailed notes, the photos, the connections you've mapped, they're invaluable." "How do you know about those?" "Thunder Fitzgerald. He's been working with us for the past year, gathering intelligence. He vouches for you." Thunder, a federal informant. I should have been angry, but mostly I was impressed. "What do you need from me?" "Everything. Your notebooks, your files, your testimony. In exchange, full immunity for you and Miss Porter, witness protection if needed, and a guarantee that your family stays safe." I looked at Evangeline. She nodded. "When and where?" "Federal building in Denver. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Bring everything." The next morning we handed over everything we'd collected. 3 notebooks, hundreds of photos, videos, audio recordings, and Evangeline's medical files from Excelsior. The FBI agents, led by Augustus Freeman, a tall, serious man with eyes that had seen too much, went through it all methodically. "This is comprehensive," Freeman said after several hours. "You've identified routes, personnel, and facilities we didn't even know existed. How did you gather all this?" "Truckers talk," I said simply. "We see everything on the roads. We just usually don't put it all together. And Miss Porter, your medical knowledge of the procedures, can you testify to what was being done?" "Every detail," she said firmly. "I have a photographic memory, Agent Freeman. I can describe every procedure I witnessed, every victim I saw, every doctor who participated." Freeman nodded. "Good. We'll need that. The prosecutors are building cases that will take years to fully prosecute. But with your evidence, we can at least shut down the network and save the victims who are still alive." "How many?" I asked. "So far, 43 confirmed living victims recovered from various facilities. Another 160 missing persons we can now confirm were taken by the network. As for how many didn't survive," he trailed off. "What about the ones who did this? The doctors, the drivers like Silas?" Freeman's expression darkened. "Silas Crane and 6 of his associates haven't been located. They disappeared the night of your confrontation at Rest Area 82. We have bolos out, but so far, nothing." Prudence's angels hadn't turned them over to authorities. I wondered if they ever would, or if justice had been served in some remote location, far from courts and lawyers. We spent 3 weeks in FBI protective custody, going over every detail, every connection. Other truckers were brought in. Obadiah, Cornelius, even old Jeremiah Hobbs, who'd been documenting strange cargo movements for 20 years. Together, we painted a picture of a vast network that had operated in the shadows of America's highways. The trials began 6 months later. I testified in 4 of them, identifying faces, confirming routes, explaining how the network operated. Evangeline was the star witness, her medical expertise and photographic memory devastating to the defense's attempts to minimize what had been done. But even as people were convicted and sentenced, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface. The network was gone, but the demand for black market organs remained. Other groups would fill the void, would find new ways to operate. I went back to trucking, but it was different now. Every rest area felt threatening. Every unmarked van made me nervous. Every CB transmission that didn't sound quite right sent chills down my spine. Evangeline tried to return to medicine, but couldn't. She ended up working with an organization that helped trafficking victims, using her knowledge to identify and assist people who'd been through similar ordeals. It was a year later when I got the call that changed everything again. I was hauling produce from California to Chicago, stopped for the night at a truck stop in Nebraska when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Bartholomew. I recognized the voice immediately. Silas Crane. You're supposed to be dead. Reports of my death were exaggerated. I'm calling to give you a warning. Professional courtesy. Warning about what? The network you helped destroy. It wasn't independent. It was a franchise, one arm of something much bigger. The parent organization is not happy about the losses you've caused. So they're coming after me? No. They're smarter than that. They're rebuilding, learning from our mistakes. New routes, new methods, new products. Things that will make what we were doing look primitive. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm out. What Prudence's angels did to my colleagues, let's just say it was educational. I've seen what happens when you push people too far, when you create too many victims. The parent organization doesn't understand that. They will eventually, but not before they create a lot more suffering. Where are you, Silas? Somewhere you'll never find me. I'm done with this life, Bartholomew. But you're not. You're marked now. Every operation they run, they'll be watching for you. Every suspicious trucker will be evaluated as a potential Bartholomew Cross. You've become the boogeyman of the black market transport world. Good. He laughed, a bitter sound. You think you won, but you just painted a target on every ethical trucker's back. They'll be more careful now, more violent. The next person who sees what you saw won't get a warning. They'll just disappear. Then we'll stop them, too. We? You think your little network of trucker vigilantes can take on an international organization with unlimited resources and no moral constraints? We did it once. You had help. Prudence's angels, the FBI, lucky timing. Next time will be different. Why do you care, Silas? Why warn me? There was a long pause. Because I have a daughter too. Had. She died in a car accident 5 years ago. Real accident, not the kind my people arranged. I got into this business to pay for her medical bills, stayed in it because I didn't know how to get out. But watching you that night, protecting your daughter, it reminded me of who I used to be. So what do you want from me? Nothing. This is goodbye, Bartholomew. I'm disappearing, starting over somewhere far from here. But I wanted you to know, stay vigilant. They're coming back, and they'll be worse than before. The line went dead. I immediately called Agent Freeman, told him about the conversation. They traced the call to a burner phone in Mexico, but by the time local authorities arrived, there was no sign of Silas. Freeman wasn't surprised by the warning. "We've been seeing signs," he admitted. "New networks forming, using different methods, drones for surveillance, cryptocurrency for payments, even more sophisticated medical procedures. What you exposed was just one head of the Hydra. So what do? We keep fighting. We keep watching. We build better networks of our own, and we hope we can stay ahead of them." I went back to the road, but now I was part of something bigger. Thunder had recruited me into an informal network of truckers who worked with law enforcement, reporting suspicious activity, documenting unusual cargo movements. We called ourselves the Highway Watch, and within a year, we had members on every major route in the country. We couldn't stop everything, but we made a difference. 17 operations shut down in the first year, 43 victims saved, hundreds of arrests. Each victory was small, but together they added up. Evangeline and I stayed in touch. She ended up marrying an FBI agent she met during the trials, had 2 kids, built a normal life. But she never forgot what she'd seen, what we'd been through. Neither did I. Clementine graduated from nursing school, went to work in emergency medicine. She never knew the full extent of what happened that night at Rest Area 82, but she knew her father had done something important, something that mattered. 5 years passed. The nightmares faded mostly. The Highway Watch became an official partnership with the Department of Transportation, giving us resources and authority we'd never had before. Rest Area 82 was permanently closed, the buildings demolished, the land left to return to prairie grass. But sometimes, late at night on empty highways, I still heard things on the CB that didn't sound right. Transmissions that were too coordinated, too precise. Codes that didn't match any legitimate shipping operation. The network was rebuilding, just as Silas had warned. Different methods, different routes, but the same evil underneath. And we were ready for them. A brotherhood of truckers who'd seen too much to ever look away again. One night, parked at a rest area in Wyoming, I was updating my logbook when a young driver knocked on my door. Kid couldn't have been more than 25, fresh-faced and nervous. "Mr. Cross? Bartholomew Cross?" "That's me. Thunder sent me. Said you could teach me about the real rules of the road, the things they don't cover in driving school." I studied him for a moment, eager, innocent, unprepared for the darkness that moved along our highways, but willing to learn, willing to help. "Get in," I said. "Let me tell you about the night I saw something I shouldn't have at Rest Area 82. The kid's name was Jebediah Turner, and he listened to my story with a mixture of horror and fascination. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I'd told him. "So it's still happening?" he finally asked. "Even after everything you exposed?" "Different forms, different methods, but yes. Evil doesn't disappear just because you shine a light on it. It adapts, evolves, finds new shadows to hide in. And we're supposed to stop it? We're supposed to watch, document, report. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it isn't." I pulled out a notebook, my 5th one now, and showed him the latest entries. 3 weeks ago, unusual traffic pattern at a way station in Utah that's supposed to be closed. 2 weeks ago, 6 refrigerated trucks traveling in convoy through Colorado, all with mismatched plates. Last week, a driver named Zebulon reported hearing screams from a supposedly empty trailer at a rest stop in Missouri. What happened to Zebulon? He called it into Highway Watch. FBI investigated, found the trailer abandoned but with evidence of human trafficking, saved 12 people who were being transported for forced labor. Jebediah nodded slowly. "Thunder said you'd teach me how to see what others miss, how to know when something's wrong. First rule, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Second rule, never investigate alone. That's how people disappear. Third rule, document everything, but discreetly. These people have gotten more sophisticated. They watch for surveillance now. Over the next few hours, I taught him our codes, our communication protocols, how to spot modified vehicles, how to identify suspicious cargo movements. He was a quick learner, asking smart questions, making connections I hadn't expected. "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked as dawn approached. "You exposed them once. You could have walked away." "Could you? Knowing what's out there, knowing people are suffering, could you just drive past and pretend not to see?" He shook his head. "That's why. Because once you know, you can't unknow. And because every life we save, every operation we shut down, it matters. Even if 3 more spring up to replace it, we saved those people. That has to count for something." My phone buzzed. Text from Thunder. "Package moving through your area. Interstate 80, eastbound. White Volvo semi, Nevada plates starting with X7. Exercise extreme caution." I showed Jebediah the message. "Want to see how this works in real time?" His eyes widened, but he nodded. We pulled out of the rest area and headed east on I-80. 20 miles later, we spotted the Volvo. It looked normal enough. Standard refrigerated trailer, professional driver, nothing obviously suspicious. But the plates were wrong. X7 wasn't a valid Nevada commercial prefix. "First lesson in practice," I told Jebediah. "We follow, but at a distance. Never get close enough to spook them." We tracked the Volvo for 50 miles, documenting its route, its speed, any vehicles it interacted with. At a truck stop near Grand Island, it pulled off. We parked where we could observe without being obvious. The driver got out. A woman, which was unusual but not unheard of. She was tall, athletic build, moved with that same coordinated precision I'd learned to recognize. She went inside the truck stop, presumably for food or facilities. "Stay here," I told Jebediah. "Watch the truck. If anything happens, if anyone approaches it, document everything." I followed the woman inside, keeping my distance. She didn't go to the restaurant or the restrooms. Instead, she went to the driver's lounge, a quiet area with couches and a TV. There was one other person there, a man I recognized, Silas Crane. He looked different, beard, different hair color, probably 30 pounds lighter, but it was definitely him. They sat together, talking quietly. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see Silas hand her something. A small device, looked like a modified GPS unit. I took photos with my phone, then retreated to my truck. Jebediah was practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Anything happen?" "No, but Mr. Cross, there's something weird about that trailer. Look at the refrigeration unit." I looked where he was pointing. The unit was running, but the temperature display was flickering between normal range and something much colder, approaching absolute zero, which was impossible for a standard truck refrigeration system. "Good eye," I said, then called Agent Freeman. "Bartholomew, please tell me you're not doing something stupid." "Silas Crane is at the Grand Island truck stop. He's with a female driver operating a suspicious rig." Silence. Then, "Silas is supposed to be in Mexico." "Well, he's in Nebraska now, and whatever's in that trailer, it's not normal cargo." "Do not engage. I'm scrambling a team, but they're 2 hours out minimum. Can you maintain surveillance?" "We'll try." But we didn't get the chance. Silas and the woman emerged from the truck stop, and he looked straight at me. No surprise, no fear, just acknowledgement. He gave a small nod, then got into a sedan I hadn't noticed before and drove away. The woman returned to the Volvo. She didn't pull out immediately. Instead, she walked to the back of the trailer, did something to the locking mechanism, and the doors swung open. Inside, visible even from our distance, were rows of cylindrical containers, each about the size of a person, all connected to a central cooling system that was far more advanced than anything that should be in a commercial truck. Then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She turned to face our truck and waved. A clear message. "I see you, I know you're watching, and I don't care." "What do we do?" Jebediah whispered. We wait for backup and hope she doesn't. The woman climbed back into her cab and pulled out, heading east at a steady legal pace. We followed, keeping Freeman updated on our position. But after 30 miles, she turned off onto a county road. We had to make a decision: follow and risk losing her in the rural maze, or stay on the interstate and let her go. "Follow," Freeman said over the phone, "but stay way back. Drone support is en route." The county road led through farmland, past abandoned barns and empty fields. The Volvo turned again, then again, clearly following a predetermined route. We were falling further behind, trying to balance pursuit with caution. Then we saw it, a massive facility in the middle of nowhere, looking like a cross between a warehouse and a laboratory. The Volvo was already at the loading dock, and figures in hazmat suits were unloading the cylindrical containers. "Got it," Freeman said when I reported the location. "Fall back to a safe distance. Do not approach. This is bigger than we thought." We parked a half-mile away behind a stand of trees, watching through binoculars as the containers were unloaded. 20 minutes later, the sky filled with helicopters, not just FBI, but military. The facility was surrounded in minutes. What happened next was chaos. Gunfire, explosions, people in hazmat suits scattering in all directions. Through the binoculars, I saw someone who might have been Silas directing people toward escape vehicles. The female trucker was nowhere to be seen. The battle, because that's what it was, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the facility was secure, but at least a dozen people had escaped, including potentially Silas. Freeman called me that night. We recovered 37 victims from that facility. They were using them for something new. Not organ harvesting, but genetic experimentation, creating human-animal hybrids for God knows what purpose. The cylinders? Stasis pods, keeping subjects in suspended animation during transport. Technology we've never seen before, possibly not even from this planet. You're joking. I wish I was. Whatever this organization is, they have access to resources and technology that shouldn't exist. This isn't just black market medicine anymore, Bartholomew. This is something else entirely. I thought about what Silas had said, about the parent organization, about things getting worse. He'd been right, but even he probably hadn't known how much worse. "What do you need from us?" I asked. "Keep watching, keep reporting, but be more careful than ever. These people, whatever they are, they're not playing by the old rules anymore." I looked at Jebediah, who'd heard the whole conversation. His face was pale but determined. "You sure you want to be part of this?" I asked him. "Someone has to be," he replied. "Might as well be us." That was 3 months ago. Since then, the Highway Watch has documented 17 similar facilities, helped shut down 9 of them. But for every one we find, 2 more seem to pop up. The technology keeps advancing, the methods keep evolving. Silas was never caught. Sometimes I get messages from unknown numbers, coordinates, warnings, bits of intelligence that always pan out. I think he's playing both sides now, trying to atone for his past while staying ahead of both law enforcement and his former employers. The female trucker disappeared completely. No trace, no trail, like she never existed. But sometimes, late at night on empty highways, truckers report seeing a white Volvo with impossible plates, carrying cargo that makes their radios go static and their electronics malfunction. Evangeline still calls occasionally, tells me about new medical anomalies showing up in hospitals, patients with impossible physiologies, genetic markers that don't match any known human patterns. The harvest continues, just in new forms. My daughter Clementine knows the truth now. I finally told her everything last month when she called to say she'd treated a patient who'd escaped from one of these facilities. The things she described, the modifications, the experiments, made even my experiences pale in comparison. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "Would you have believed me?" "Probably not. But Dad, if this is real, if this is happening, shouldn't everyone know? And cause a panic?" Make people afraid to travel, to trust the infrastructure that keeps this country running? The authorities know. They're fighting it. Sometimes that has to be enough. But I wonder if it is enough. Every night, thousands of trucks move across this country's highways, carrying cargo that no one inspects, going to destinations that don't officially exist. Most of it is legitimate: food, electronics, consumer goods. But some of it isn't. Some of it is human cargo, or worse, things that used to be human. The highway watch keeps growing. Truckers, law enforcement, even some reformed criminals who've seen too much to stay silent. We're a thin line between normalcy and nightmare, witnesses to things that shouldn't exist in a sane world. But the world isn't sane. It's full of shadows and secrets, moving at 70 miles per hour down dark highways. And someone has to watch those shadows, to document the secrets, to save who can be saved. That's what I tell myself when I'm alone in my cab at 3 a.m., watching another suspicious convoy move through the darkness. That's what keeps me going when the weight of what I know threatens to crush me. Because in the end, we're all just cargo to someone. The only question is whether we're being transported to safety or to something much worse. And the only way to know is to keep watching, keep documenting, keep fighting the darkness 1 mile at a time. The road stretches on, endless and full of secrets. And I'll keep driving it, keep watching, until my last mile is done. Because that's what truckers do. We haul our loads, we watch the roads, and sometimes, if we're very lucky or very cursed, we save lives in the process. Even if no one ever knows. Even if the darkness always seems to be winning. Even if the cargo in the next truck might be something that will haunt my nightmares forever. This is the life I've chosen. Or maybe it chose me that night at Rest Area 82 when I saw something I shouldn't have. Either way, there's no going back now. Only forward, into whatever horror or hope the next mile brings.